Okay. The time is 10 a.m., January 8th, 2026. I want to welcome you all to the Agriculture and Natural Resources Budget Committee. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Luke is going to speak to us about the process today, and then David Weiss from the Revisor's Office is going to just run over the rules. They are the same as 2025, what we adopted back then, but a refresher doesn't hurt anybody. So with that, Luke, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Luke Drury. I am a fiscal analyst with Legislative Research, and I am your committee facilitator for the regular session and here today. I do just want to walk through the notebooks that are in front of you, let you know what is in there. Your first page is going to be an agenda of today, the rundown of the agencies that you will be hearing the budget summaries for. Your next page, this will be maybe a little bit new, but it looks like this. And that is what we call our shorthand. That shorthand captures the recommendations that have been made by the Special Committee on State Budget to the agencies that you all will hear in this committee. Of note, you will notice the first item there, for example, is Department of Wildlife and Parks. We are not hearing the Department of Wildlife and Parks today, but this document does have all the changes that have been made to these budgets that you all will be hearing. Throughout the rest of your binder, there is the budget summaries for each agency that you will be hearing today, along with any testimony that the agencies did submit. And I did go ahead and send for those members who are joining us via WebEx, I did send electronic copies of them as well. And I do believe, Madam Chair, that's all I wanted to speak with the committee about. Oh, I do want to note one other thing, actually. I did put vouchers down where y'all are at. If you sign those, get those back to me. I'll give them to the chair to sign, and I'll then submit that, give that to LAS. So that's what I have, unless you all have any questions.
Thank you. Vice Chair Carlin.
Forgot about this microphone. Is it on? Yeah. What does action reversed mean? I mean, under committee recommendations, it says action reversed, then there's a deletion of funds. So is the action reversed the deletion of funds, or what does that stand for?
Madam Chair, Representative, to answer the question, that would mean, like, for example, the first item here, the EDIF reappropriation for wildlife and parks, they added $61,000. Action reverse would essentially mean a delete. So deleting $61,000, that's where you see the negative computation there. And then you would see then under Department of Agriculture, for example, the 1.5% lapse, that was deleted by the agency, or showed up in the agency's request. That action was reversed to put that back in, and then the entirety of the reappropriations were lapsed. So that's where you see there underneath that next line. We use for the Special Committee on Legislative Budget, the agency's request was the starting point. So then these will show then what the Special Committee on Legislative Budget did in comparison to the agency's request. So that would be there to answer your question. You would note then, or I would note for you, you do have an instance on page 3 of this document. Underneath General Government, you see Kansas Corporation Commission. For example, the retention bonuses, you see there it says no action taken. That means this was part of the agency's budget. And then you will see then the committee recommendation was to delete. So you do see that, and you will see then those numbers that go out to the right will show what the action was taken by the Special Committee on Legislative Budget. I would note that some of those motions included to deleting any new FTEs that were added by the agency, deleting all reappropriations from appropriated funds. That includes the general fund, the EDIF, the state water plan fund, and then also to delete all enhancements or supplemental requests that were submitted. Those are by and large the those global motions that took place that affect most of these agencies that are, that you all will be working through. So a little bit of context there, Representative.
It seemed to me it was a double negative, but I get it. Thank you.
So basically, the money was taken away and the agencies are going to request it back, or maybe. Okay, all right. Any other questions for Luke? Thank you.
Madam Chair.
David, if you would just briefly go over the rules for the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. Yeah, for the committee rules and the conferee rules and guidelines, I mean, these are the same as were adopted by the committee during the 2025 session. You'll notice since we're in the second year of the biennium, there's not been any adjustments to the rules at this point. It's it's if there's the specific committee rules, and I will mention that if people want to get copies, there are electronic copies under the on the committee page. If you go to ks.legislature.com under committee documents, you will see links to both the committee rules and the conferee rules. And in case where these committee rules do not apply, then you go to the House rules that govern, and if the House rules don't address it, then it's Mason's Manual Legislative Procedure governs. But then all powers, duties, and responsibilities not addressed within the committee rules are reserved to the chair. So I mean, the chair has the kind of the full charge of the committee. It's the typical nature of it. So yeah, any the procedural things that happened in committee last year, if you can remember, the motions and seconds and all that, that is all still the same and would apply for 26 as the same in 25 unless changed. So with that, Madam Chair, I can stand for any questions.
Questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you, David. Appreciate all the professional people here. We've got revisor, research department folks, people that send this message out to the world. Reed, Ariana, thanks for being here. And Jacob, thanks for being here. Okay, since this is an official meeting, I need to see if there are any bill introductions. Any bill introductions? Seeing none, we will begin with the first budget, the Board of Accountancy, and Jacob Klesby from KLRD will give us the rundown on it.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jacob Klesby, and I am the fiscal analyst assigned to the Board of Accountancy. In front of you, you should have a document that looks like this, minus the highlights. These are my personal notes on the document. This is the KLRD budget summary, and this one is specifically tailored to the Board of Accountancy. I will be walking you through the various stages of the document as I go along and present the information. It begins with an executive summary, but then there are various charts and such that I will break down as we go along. And I would also like to introduce Mindy Speck, the Executive Director of the agency. She will be available to stand for questions should the committee have any for her. The Board of Accountancy provides for the certification regulation of certified public accountants, or CPAs, within the state of Kansas. Continuing on the first page, if you look at the bottom, you'll see two pie charts. This represents the agency request as part of the statewide total. The Board of Accountancy does not receive any state general funds, so if you see there is a $0 in SGF, which also then makes up 0% of the state budget. And then on the total, you'll see the total budget for the Board of Accountancy, which is $488,000, which makes up less than 1% of all other state expenditures. Turning to the second page, you will see a 10-year expenditure history of the agency from fiscal years 2018 to fiscal year 2017. There are, once again, no SGF funds, so that is shown by a dark blue line at the bottom, but then all other funds are captured by the green line. The table below the line graph provides numerical values to the data within this chart for all funds, showing the agency budget for each fiscal year, what the change is from the previous fiscal year, and then the FTE positions held by the agency and changes in the Consumer Price Index. Below that is a table illustrating a 5-year change, 10-year change, and 3-year average of all these values. If you will turn to the third page of the document, this highlights expenditures by major purpose. All expenditures within the agency are held within state operations, and this data appears almost identical to the previous chart, just conveying different information, but still the same expenditures. The second chart on the page also provides numerical values for this information through expenditures by category. The only agency expenditures are once again in state operations, which 52.7% of the agency's expenditures are in salaries and wages, 45.5% in contractual services, 1.2% in commodities, and 0.6% in capital outlay. If you will turn to page 4 of this document, this just provides a more in-depth look at this information for expenditures by classification, breaking down more of what is included within these state operations, so salaries and wages, contractual services, commodities, and capital outlay. Turning to page 5 of the document, this highlights expenditures by fund. The Board of Accountancy is a fee-funded agency, so all expenditures are included within the Board of Accountancy fee fund. This page also includes a fee fund analysis for the Board of Accountancy fee fund, which is a statutory fee fund. It is the only source of funds for the Board of Accountancy. This highlights the previous 3 fiscal years' beginning balances, revenue, expenditures, and ending balances on this fund for those 3 fiscal years. If you will turn to page 6 of this document, this provides an overview of the fee schedule for the Board of Accountancy. On the far left in that column, you'll see the title of each individual fees. I am prepared to give a brief description on these fees, but I'm sure additional information I would have to defer to the agency on. But then the current fee is highlighted, so what the agency is currently charging under their fees. The statutory limit of these fees, which many of these fees are under their statutory limit. And if you will note, the previous fee column is blank, and this indicates that the agency has not changed with their fees within the last 2 fiscal years. And finally, as a subheading underneath is the statutory authority for these fees. And if you will turn to page 7, this begins our analysis of fiscal year 2026. The beginning chart highlights the approved balance of the agency approved by the 2025 legislature. There were no SGF expenditures, and the approved amount for the agency was $489,000 with 3 FTE positions. There are no reappropriations for this agency, nor is the agency requesting any supplemental requests, nor any FTE increases. Under other changes, the agency features 3 budget requests, which result in a net total of a decrease of $514,000 for the budget. So the agency is asking for less money in fiscal year 2026 than was granted to them by the 2025 legislature. This includes a decrease in salaries and wages of $7,500, all special revenue funds for salaries and wages. This decrease is attributable to the retirement of the previous director in 2024, for which the agency had anticipated and budgeted for a 4-month transition period. However, the final transition period occurred only over the course of a month, which resulted in lower spending on salaries and wages. The agency's revised estimate under line item 3 also includes an increase of $4,000 for contractual services. This is due to increased costs in assigned counsel for contract lawyers and anticipated completion of a database conversion. And then finally, the agency estimates an increase of $2,700 for capital outlay due to the purchase of new computer hardware and other technological support equipment. And once again, all of these changes result in a net total decrease of $514. I'm happy to stand for questions on fiscal year 2026 or move to fiscal year 2027.
Thank you, Jacob. Questions, anybody? let's go on.
All right. If you will turn to page 8, this is the final page of the document and the analysis of fiscal year 2027. The Board of Accountancy is a biennial agency, and unlike most, it actually features an approved amount for fiscal year 2027 that was approved by the 2025 legislature, which was $489,000. The agency, again, is not asking for any additional FTE positions, nor are they asking for any enhancement requests. And the change this year is the agency revised estimate includes a net total decrease of $222, all from special revenue funds, just under all other adjustments, which is related to various reductions in expenditures and internal reallocations in the agency that results in a net total decrease of $222. I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Jacob. Questions of the committee? So if I did my math right, in 2 years, the agency is actually going to have a net of $736 that they don't want from allocations.
That is correct.
That's great. Okay, so now Luke, help me out. Do we need to ask the agency to come forward if they want? Okay, so thank you, Jacob. And now we have the Board of Accountancy. Oh, they didn't send anybody, did they?
Mindy's back, she's right here.
Oh, Mindy, I'm sorry. Okay, do you wish to comment on anything? Just, if you do, that's great. If not, that's fine. Certainly. Representative Curtis.
Oh, thank you. Hello, thank you for being here today. We're starting early this year. So I'm just curious how many CPAs we have.
We have licensed CPAs, we have 38, about 3,800.
3,800, okay. And just curious too, how dispersed are they across our state?
I'm not sure, I haven't really looked at the demographics. I can do that and get back to you. That's kind of a goal in mind, is to kind of look at each region of the state and try to figure out where they're all at to make sure that we're meeting the needs and reaching out. We also have CPAs that practice from out of state, so they're included in that number too.
That would just be nice information to have. It's no urgency, but if you do have it, that would be I'm just curious. And then the other, is it okay, Madam Chair, if I keep going?
Absolutely.
Get back into my right protocol here. So just curious on contractual services, what does that encompass? What do we have in that?
Services includes the services that we're charged from OITS for computer fees and so on, internet, computer services, telephone services, other contractual services. We have attorney's fees, contracts with, let's see. Some detail here.
And I'm curious on the attorney's fees, what service would that be, or what would that be entail?
So basically, that is mostly enforcement. If we have hearings or cases that have to be heard, we have to use attorneys to process those cases. Also, with our rules and regs, we rely on our legal team to help us make sure all our rules and regs are up to date. And this year, we will be reviewing all of them again, and maybe potentially updating some rules and regs to keep current with the times. And and I also, if I have legal questions, I get a lot of questions from firms, from accounting firms and CPAs about maybe if they're selling a firm or if they're merging, what are the expectations? What do they need to do? A lot of those questions, we don't offer any legal advice, obviously, from our board, but if there are questions I can help them with, if I don't know the answer, I have to lean on my legal team to get the answer there, make sure I give the correct answer. My predecessor was there for many, many years. She had it in the top of her head, and if I just had a fraction of that knowledge, which one day I will, it would be great.
That's great, I appreciate that. Kind of gives us a better overview of what you're dealing with is. Are there any particular challenges that you're facing this year, you think, in the agency?
I do not. The biggest challenge was myself getting acclimated to working for the state and the way it functions differently than maybe an outside, company. It's quite different. And just learning that and also keeping the workflow rolling. We did have some staff shortages last year, which was very difficult during when we were enrolling the CPAs in June and July. But we've overcome that. We have good staff now, very supportive staff. Their training is coming along well, and they're knowledgeable. And so I really am looking forward to a great year.
Thank you. Thank you for the overview.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mindy. You've come a long ways. Any other questions for the agency? Jacob, I do have a couple for you. Sorry. Call you back up. On page 3, could you explain those percentage changes in the 18.6 and the 14.9? Because it was pretty steady and then it actually went down and then it jumped up again.
Yes, Madam Chair. Here, I have that right here. So expenditure increases between the fiscal years of 2022 and 2024. The first, they're related primarily to changes in salaries and wages, rent, and then other fees incurred by the agency. Starting in 2024, the agency did begin to budget for the transition of the executive director position, and then a new staff was hired in those other fiscal years at new improved rates to increase retention. Rent has also gradually increased each year by a larger amount. And then additional fees for board members to attend regional conferences and travel has also increased. There's been other increases such as OITS fees. There's been significant increases in various forms of dues and subscriptions to organizations or forms of software or other programs that just operate on a subscription model basis. And then there were additional fees related to other instances of professional fees and then benefits and such related again to that 4-month plan transition period for the director.
Thank you. And if you turn to page 4, could you define what commodities are under the expenditures?
Yes, Madam Chair. Commodities for this agency includes things such as refills for the water cooler, food and refreshment as part within the office for various programs, holidays, or even a retirement party for the director. There are additional programs for accounting guides and publications. I have the acronyms. I apologize. I would have to defer to the agency for what programs precisely those are, but it's the GAAP and AICPA. Those are accounting guides and publications that serve as resource guides for the department, in addition to general office supplies, and then paper and toner for printing and copying.
Okay. And on page 5, the computer hardware went up. I mean, for 2026, it went up. What, did they buy new computers or what?
Madam Chair, for the precise instances, I know new computer hardware was purchased. I'll have to defer to the agency for what precisely was purchased, whether it was monitors, modems, or anything precise such as that, but I do know it was related to computer hardware.
Okay, thank you. And then one last thing on page 6, the revenue transfers. Could you explain that?
Yes,
please?
Madam Chair. So this is a transfer every year from the fee fund to the special litigation fund to cover potentially costly cases. This is standard within many agencies, especially the fee boards. So there is the fee fund that the agency primarily operates out of, but then they also reserve a special litigation fund in the potential event of other more costly litigation that could not be covered by the costs within the fee fund itself. So that it's essentially there is a cushion of sorts, so then additional funding wouldn't have to be approved or requested by the agency, and they would be able to afford the cost of litigation.
So that's 20,000 every year. So what's in that revenue fund for those special cases that require a lot of money to deal with?
I'm sure I have that information. Let me pull it up quickly. The ending balance in cash forward in fiscal year 2024 was $275,000. The ending balance was $295,000 in fiscal year 2025. And as part of the budget request resulting from these revenue transfers, the requested amounts for 26 and 27 are $315,000 and $335,000 respectively.
Thank you. One last question. On page 7, the third one down, what is the certification by reciprocity? I didn't understand that.
Madam Chair, certification by reciprocity is related to someone coming from out of state certified as a CPA, but wanting to either move to or continue their practice in the state of Kansas. So it allows them to essentially, it accepts their certification in another state in place of examinations and having to begin the whole CPA process again, and allows them to practice in Kansas. So it's recognizing another state certification and considering it valid and granting a Kansas certification for a CPA.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee about the Board of Accountancy and its budget? Representative Carlin. No, I'm just going off of an older copy that I had things written on. So
I understand. I just,
the new one is,
that happens, but I didn't know if I was missing a page.
yeah,
I found
one.
out everything we talked about.
Oh, yeah. I'll have to double check that with the next ones. So
I'd like to be sure and get an updated one, please.
you have the updated one. I have an old one.
You have the old one, okay. So this is.
Luke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as going through the process of our publications, these do change iterations, the page numbers and whatnot. And so those items that the committee has in front of them in their binders are the most up-to-date and thoroughly edited documents that we have at this point in time.
I apologize for that.
The other documents might also be slightly off on page number.
I'll double check before I do anything. Any other questions? If not, we will close the hearing on the Board of Accountancy. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Jacob. Next, we will move to the Office of the State Bank Commissioner, and Ariana Waddell will give us the update on that budget.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Good morning. Sorry. Good morning. I guess I don't know if you can hear me. Okay. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman. Today I'll be presenting the budget for the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. And in the audience, we have the Director of Finance and Administration, Mr. Jesse Becker. So the Office of the State Bank Commissioner FY 2026 revised estimate is $14.1 million, nearly all from the Bank Commissioner Fee Fund. And this represents less than 1% of the statewide total expenditures. If you could please turn your attention to page 3. which shows the budget policy snapshot, which includes the supplemental enhancements in FY 2026 and FY 2027, 26 and FY 2027 analysis. If you could please turn your attention to page 4 for the summary of expenditures, which shows the 10-year expenditures. So for FY 2022, we saw a increase in expenditures due to a FTE increase. And also in FY 2023, there was a FTE increase, and also the agency experienced increased expenditure as the pandemic-related concerns decrease, resulting in higher costs in areas such as travel. In FY 2024, there were additional there were 2 FTEs added. There was additional 2 FTE, those were trust examiners. And FY 2025, increases related to the pay plan shortfall, and the State Finance Council added $500,000 for the pay plan. If you could please turn your attention to page 5. This shows the expenditures by category table, which shows that 98.6% of the budget is allocated to state operations, with that including 83.3% represents salary and wages, and about 13.6% in contractual services. That 1.4%, that represents other assistance for grants for consumer education programs for Kansas residents through the Consumer Education Settlement Fund. The grants are funded by fines and settlements imposed on companies regulated by the Office of the State Bank Commissioner's Consumer and Mortgage Lending Division. Due to the consumer complaints, and note that the agency cannot use those funds for any other purpose than consumer education. I believe the agency awarded rewarded 7 grants in 2025. If you could please turn your attention to page 6 for the expenditure by classification. I'm going to note for under contractual services, rent, that includes building space rental, software rental, and fax, and expenses related to like fax and copiers. Most of the rent expenses related to the building space and software rental. For the fees, professional, that includes attorney and lawyer fees for payments to outside legal counsel to address certain highly specialized or technical legal matters. Also includes the Office of Administrative Hearings, also KBI record checks. For the fee other services, that's related to dues paid by the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, which is a national trade association and accrediting body for state bank regulators. There's also some fees related to Office of Information Technology Services, and there's data access fees, also expenses for job-related training and conference registration and tuition for employees and students. Let's see, for under commodities, when we say other, that includes expenses such as security badges, household supplies. If you could please turn your attention to page 9 for the Bank Commissioner Fee Fund analysis. So the Bank Commissioner Fee Fund is supported by assessments and application fees paid by the state chartered banks, trust entities, and technology-enabled fiduciary financial institutions, or TEFIs. And we go more into those fees on page 13 and 14 at the end of this summary. The bank assessments are based on assets reported to the FDIC, while trust entities and TEFIs are assessed by fiduciary assets reported in call reports. The agency uses a tiered rate schedule and collects assessments 3 times each year, half in July and 1 quarter each in January and May. And if you could please turn your attention to page 11 for the fiscal 2026 analysis. The total approved budget for FY 2026 is $14.1 million. And this includes 13.9 million from the bank commissioner fee fund to 200,000 from the commissioner education settlement fund. And the request and the approved budget included 114 FTE positions. I note that there's no state general fund appropriations or reappropriations. And in this fiscal year, there was no supplemental request. For item 1, the approved budget includes 275,000 out from the bank commissioner fee fund for the 2025 pay plan. And item 2, all other adjustments, there was no change from the total approved amount for FY 2026, but there were adjustments throughout expenditures categories, which included an increase of $30,000 to replace a 2014 Dodge Caravan with a passenger van due to the vehicle's age, mileage, and maintenance costs. But I will note for that one that the 2025 legislator added $35,000 that was part of the agency request that was approved for the purchase of a vehicle in FY 2026. So the agency revised request includes the purchase by includes increasing the purchase by $30,000 with a total of $65,000 in expenditure to replace the Dodge Caravan. And for that expenditure, it's offset by contractual service expenditures on meals and lodging. If you can turn to the next page for the fiscal 2027 analysis. And I apologize. Madam Chairman, any questions for FY 2026?
Thank you, Ariana. Any questions for 2026? Yeah, let's just do 27 and then we'll ask questions.
Okay, so for the approved budget for FY 2027 is 13.9 million. This includes 13.7 million for the bank commissioner fee fund, $200,000 from the commissioner's education settlement, and also 114 FTE positions. The enhancement request totals $432,912, all from the bank commissioner fee fund, with additional 2 FTE positions, which therefore the revised estimate would be 14.3 million and 116 FTE positions. For item 2, the breakdown of the enhancement request, so $157,000 all from the bank commissioner fee fund, and the 2 FTE would support oversight of the earned wage access or EWA providers. The positions would be in the consumer mortgage lending program and would include 2 financial examiners with an hourly rate of $27.10. In 2024, the legislature enacted HB, or House Bill 2560, authorizing the agency to regulate EWA services, while the fiscal note originally anticipated 1 examiner. Participation has exceeded the expectations, so the agency is requesting 2 FTE instead of 1. Item 3, which includes the 2025 legislative pay plan, that's $275,000 out from the bank commissioner fee fund from FY 2027. That's to account for increase in expenditure limitations associated with the 2025 legislative pay plan. And item 4 includes the all other adjustments. And outside of the enhancement request, the 2027 budget reflects no net change. There were increases in salaries and wages that were offset by reductions in contractual services, but there was no net change beyond the enhancement request. And once again, I'm going to note that the fees are on page 13 and 14. Madam Chair, any questions for FY 2026 and FY 2027?
Thank you, Ariana. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Vice Chair Carlin.
Okay, I'm hearing you and I'm following you, but I'm not finding it on the paper. Page, you said 13 and 14, so I'm assuming that would be 14 and 15, right? Just the very last thing you said, I was unable to find 2027 written in the charts, so I'm not sure if I have everything. I found it on page like 11 or 12. I found page 12, but after that, where did you go to the last comments? It only says 26 on these. And I'm just not sure I'm finding it. Molly's got it.
Representative, I believe, and Ariana can correct me, but if I'm understanding your question correctly, page 14 just lists the current year's statutory fees for the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. Whether fees have been established yet or not for fiscal year 2027, I cannot speak to that. Ariana may have more information.
But there's not a page that has a heading here of 2027 of what she was discussing.
Not for the fees, no.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Curtis.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if they're really for Ariana or for perhaps the agency, but do we have more information on the Consumer Education Fund, the grants that were awarded and what those were and what they were for?
Madam Chairwoman? Yes, ma'am. So I can provide you with more information, but I can also tell you about them as well. Yes, ma'am. Let's see. So there were, I guess, application for 10 submitted grant. There were 10 grants submitted in FY 2025, and there were 7 applications approved, and the recipients included the Mirror Inc. They received about $4,000. The Kansas Bankers Educational Foundation, they received $20,000. The Kansas Council for Economic Education received $20,000. The Jobs for America's Graduates, Kansas, JAG-K, received $25,000. The Omni, I might mispronounce this, the Omni Circle Group received $25,000. The Consumer Credit Counseling Service of the Heartland received $30,000. And the Pando Initiative received $55,000.
Would it be possible to get more information from the agency about what the grant money is going to be used for and what the programs are that we're funding?
Madam Chairman, yes, I'll ask the agency for that, and I know the grants are for consumer education programs. And once again, it's funded by fines and settlements imposed on companies related to the Consumer Mortgage Lending Division. But I can ask the agency for my information.
Okay, and then I have another question on page 8. It has state aid payments. What are those? What are state aid payments?
Madam Chairwoman, so that's actually referring to those grants, the Consumer Education Settlement Fund grants.
Gotcha, okay. And then I had, okay, and so on page 11, the other changes where they deferred the $30,000 in contractual services to purchase the Dodge Caravan. So is that, so they did that, they just made that adjustment, is that correct? They just,
Madam Chairwoman, so for the approved budget, they previously included $35,000 for a purchase of the vehicle, but they, I guess, realized they had an increased need, so they're asking for additional $85,000 for the total of $65,000 to replace the caravan. So it's a part of the approved, but they're increasing it above the approved amount.
Got it. I had, just was not following that, but now I get that. And then, do we have any idea how many state chartered banks we have today?
Excuse me, Madam Chairwoman, I believe the agency provided testimony that has an overview on that, but they can, of course, go more into that if they choose to. But I believe the agency provided information in their testimony.
I hadn't gotten that far in my notebook, but you're correct. I see it now. There is. And it says that we have 13,900 state chartered financial institutions. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ariana about the budget? Okay, I just have one about it would be, let me see here, which. The earned wage access staffing, which is on page 12. Is that, could you tell, maybe, and this might be a question for the agency also, but what is the earned wage access service? And that could be, I'm thinking it's probably an agency question.
Madam Chairwoman, definitely the agency could probably definitely go more into detail, but for earned wage access, that refers to a service that allows employees to access a portion of their wages that they have already earned, but not yet have been paid in advance for their scheduled payday.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Representative Curtis?
I just read down a little bit further, and that is evidently due to legislation that we passed and have now asked this agency to take that on. However, I guess my question is that when we originally had approved that, we thought that the cost for this program and the FTEs were going to be a little bit lower, and they're not. So, but yeah, it's due to legislation that we passed, it looks like.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Ariana. And we'll now hear from Jesse Becker from the Bank Commissioner Board.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jesse Becker. I'm the Director of Finance and Administration for the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. We provided quite a bit of information to you all. I'm not going to go over that, but with a couple of the questions, I am going to go over some of the slides that we had prepared. Also online through WebEx should be our commissioner, our bank commissioner for the state, David Herndon. So he could also ask any or answer any questions, and we do have staff too from the agency that can elucidate anything that needs clarification.
Excuse me,
Yes,
before we get
absolutely.
started, one of the committee members that's doing WebEx says that he can see, but he cannot hear what's going on. Representative White. I'll have him check his audio. He just sent a text that he can hear now, so all is good. All is good.
Yes, but I'll be just doing, I can start with slide 10. Okay. You know, I'm only going to cover 2 or 3, so it's probably you probably don't need to. Okay? Okay. The first I did want to talk about was slide 10, and that deals with the Earned Wage Access Program. During the 2024 legislative session, the Legislature passed House Bill 2560, initiated by the earned wage access industry. That bill authorized earned wage access, or also called EWA, in Kansas and assigned oversight to the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. EWA allows employees to access a portion of their earned wages before their scheduled payday. When the bill was enacted, we assumed that it would require about one FTE examiner to take care of this new program. However, as of December 2025, Kansas has 26 registered EWA providers with 6 additional applications under review. Participation has been significantly higher than we anticipated, and each provider requires ongoing oversight, licensing examination, and when necessary, enforcement. To avoid delays and to maintain timely supervision, we are requesting 2 FTEs dedicated to EWA oversight. This request is included as enhancement package 2 with a total cost of $157,670 in FY27. The costs will be covered through licensing fees. In fact, the Consumer Mortgage Lending Division anticipated this need, and the funding is already available. We are requesting the creation of the positions and the authority to expend those funds to fulfill the oversight obligations we've been required to do. The other point that I thought would be a good idea to cover is the vehicle request, because that changed from last year to this year, and that's covered in slide 11 if you kind of want to follow along. We currently operate a 2014 Dodge Grand Caravan that has over 125,000 miles on it. And the vehicle is experiencing increasingly frequent and increasingly costly repair costs. We are requesting to replace it with a newer 8-passenger van or a similar type vehicle, estimated at $65,000. Last year, you all approved $35,000 for this purchase, but it was decided to request additional funds so we can purchase a vehicle that is available on the current market and meets operational requirements. Furthermore, we're in a unique situation this year where the Office of OPC, Office of Procurement and Contracts, has allowed a waiver so we don't have to purchase a vehicle on state contracts, which will let this purchase be a little bit more flexible. And I'm not promising you that we will buy a new vehicle, but it's just, if the opportunity arises, we'd like to take it. This purchase would be budget neutral. In prior fiscal years, the agency accelerated certain hardware replacements using existing resources. That reduced the need for planned hardware replacements this year. Also, as Ariana mentions in her budget summary, a decrease in some contractual services such as travel and subsistence will also be utilized to cover the remaining parts of that purchase. So I hope that's covered everything. Oh, one other question that was raised before was the number of licensed entities. Yes, our agency follows 2 main divisions. One is banking and trust. The other one is consumer mortgage lending. We have deputy commissioners that oversee both of these. Now, for state chartered banks, we have 100, I believe it's 156 or 153 state chartered banks, and it's in my testimony. I just, and then we have over 13,000 credit entities. Yeah, consumer mortgage lending entities, and money transmitters, and also that covers earned wage access is over on the CML side. So, Madam Chair, if there's any more questions, we'd be happy to stand for them.
Any other questions from the committee? Representative Curtis.
So as far as financial services and banking services in our state, how do you feel that we're doing as far as serving all of our communities?
Madam Chair, at first, well, we're seeing some, what might look like on the surface some alarming trends. The number of banks, not just in Kansas, but across the country, is shrinking significantly. However, what that is mostly due to are mergers and acquisitions by other banks. What we're not seeing is a closure of branches overall. We're seeing a reduction in bank names, but not branches. So we're fortunate in there, because a lot of communities only have one community bank, and it can be devastating if that one bank were to leave, but we're not seeing that. Overall, generally, we're not seeing that.
Would you say both urban and rural? I mean, I guess in downtown KCK, we've lost a lot of, so I feel like now I'm in a financial desert, a bridge desert. I'm in every desert you can put on earth here. And, you know, my own bank, which is a local bank, Bank of Labor, they recently did reinvest in downtown. We lost our branch, but they did recently. So I didn't know if you were seeing, you know, any dynamics like certain areas. And I'm not sure that really in your office you can do how much other than like inform us and let us know that maybe there are gaps that we should be looking at, ways to fill.
Madam Chair. Yes, unfortunately, in your case, our emphasis usually is looking at the rural communities because that's what we're most concerned about, because that can be hard. But yeah, we can look into it a little bit more and we can get back to you on what we're seeing as in terms of financial deserts in urban areas.
That'd be great. And I keep trying to tie my most economically distressed urban area to all of our rural incentives because I keep arguing we have the same issues and the same challenges for the most part, and we should be a little more inclusive with that. So thank you.
Anyone else? Representative Bloom.
Madam Chair. Good morning, sir. I remember the 80s farm crisis. What is the health of our rural banks?
Madam Chair. Overall, strong. Now, a lot of that right now we're in good shape. But we are seeing some cracks, and these are mostly macroeconomic situations. We are seeing an uptick in delinquent payments on loans. The farming community with just what's been in the news is being hit hard, and for a lot of smaller banks, the agricultural loans and the agricultural customers are a big part of it. So I've heard our commissioner say this several times. There is concern. We're seeing cracks, but nothing maybe epidemic yet. Definitely nothing epidemic yet. But it needs to be monitored and watched.
Unless you have cattle, nothing is paying for itself.
True.
Everything else is below the cost of production. And we went through the 80s. I don't want to see it happen again. 21% interest. And it was a nightmare. Are we there yet?
Madam Chair, absolutely not there yet. But those are the macroeconomic things that we do need to pay attention to and watch.
We're starting to hear more about bankruptcies, you know, farms every day. Yeah, it really concerns me. Thank you.
Vice Chair Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm interested in this EWA, the response to our legislation. And as I read that quickly, I'm thinking, do we employers need to change our payment schedule to our people? Is it enough of an issue that we as a state, not you personally, but would it improve things financially in your organizations to just have to pay them twice as a regular routine instead of a once a month? Or if you upped your schedule of payment, would that relieve your personal business situation in any way?
Madam Chair. That's an interesting question. Over the summer, I attended a meeting from the 10th District Federal Reserve, and Fed Governor Schmidt mentioned something, more of a prediction. He sees our culture, our society, moving towards a system where we work today, get paid today.
The old way.
And he didn't say that in reference to earned wage access, but I thought that was very interesting, that what your point is well taken across the industry, that we might be moving to such a system.
Well, just as a comment, everything that I have done in the interim between April and now to repair things in my home or have a plumber or whatever, they want money right now. And that's okay for me, but nobody wants to do statements. And even my credit card bills, it used to be a month, it's 3 weeks. So, I mean, it's a money situation that I think we're just kind of dealing with individually. And is that telling us something?
Madam Chair, just kind of off the top of my head, I wonder if this is all related to what we're seeing with cryptocurrency and stable coin. And the real, one of the big advantages of stable coin is immediate payment, immediate transfer of funds. And so I wonder if that's kind of initiating this. I've often once asked myself, though, it seems sometimes like we're living in a previous century when it does take a relatively long time to transfer some funds. So I think that's what consumers are demanding is more immediate payments or transfer, I should say transfer of money.
Back to my original question, is there anything that we need to do on that EWA law? And if so, you can talk to me later about that. I mean, if it's something that the state should rethink. Thank you.
Madam Chair, absolutely. I'll take it back and we'll talk about it at the agency.
Any other questions for the State Bank Commissioner Office? Do you have any closing comments or anything you'd like to say?
No, thank you, but thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we'll close the hearing on the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. I have been told that lunches are here, and so instead of waiting until noon, we're going to take a 15-minute break for you to grab your lunch, staff and committee members. And let's see, what time is it? 11:02. Let's come back at 11:25, and then we'll start with the Kansas Department of Credit Unions at 11:25. We're in recess. Let's come back at let's come Okay, moving on. Next on the agenda is the Kansas Department of Credit Unions. Ariana, the fiscal analyst for that agency, will give the budget update. Ariana?
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'll be presenting the budget for the Kansas Department of Credit Unions. The Kansas Department of Credit Unions FY 2026 revised estimate is 1.8 million, all from the credit union fee fund, which represents less than 1% of the statewide total expenditure. If you could please turn your attention to page 2, which shows the budget policy snapshot, which includes the supplementals and enhancements in FY 2026 and FY 2027, which will be further explained in the FY 2026 and FY 2027 analysis. If you could please turn your attention to page 3 for the summary of expenditures. If you could turn your attention. So for the 10-year expenditure history, we see an increase in FY 2021, and this is due to the agency filling previously vacant positions. In FY 2024, there was an increase primarily related to the legislature adding $90,000 all for the credit fee fund for travel to on-site examinations and professional development training. Note that in previous years, there was reduced travel during the COVID-19 pandemic, so this was money to increase travel. In FY 2026, the increase is related to the supplemental request of $32,000, and FY 2027, there's a decrease between FY 2027 and this is related to less contractual services, including travel and assistance and fee other service and rent. That's a decrease from a decrease from FY 26 to FY 27. If you could please turn your attention to page 5. The agency only has state operations. The expenditure by category table shows that 68% of the agency's budget is in salary and wages, and about 29.6% is allocated to contractual services. If you could please turn your attention to page 6, which shows the expenditures by classification. For salary and wages, note that the increases in FY 2026 and FY 27 are related to the supplemental enhancement requests for the examiner's salaries, as well as the pay plan for FY 2027, and the contractual services. With the fee other services, these increases are in supplemental and enhancement requests for the financial examiner training, which I'll go in further detail. For the contractual services, this increase is in the increase in rent expenditures associated with the supplemental and enhancement requests for the examiner software. For capital outlay, the equipment and furniture, that includes a purchase of a new vehicle for new hire in FY 26 and additional vehicle purchase in FY 27, which is part of which was part of the FY 2027 approved budget. If you could please turn your attention to page 8 for the fee fund analysis for the Kansas Department of Credit Union. The credit union fee fund is the sole funding source for the Kansas Department of Credit Unions, meaning that agency has no state general funds support. Fees are assessed annually based on the asset size of state chartered credit unions as of March 31st. The credit union administrator sets fees prior to July 1st, aligning with National Credit Union Administration and the NCUA examination schedule, and ensuring revenues are sufficient to cover expenditures. About 90% of the fee revenues are retained by the agency, and 10% are deposited in the state general fund, up to $100,000 per fiscal year. If you could please turn your attention to page 9 for the fiscal 2026 analysis. For line item 1, the fiscal 2026 approved budget for the Kansas Department of Credit Union totals 1.4 million with 12 FTE positions. The revised estimate is 1.8 million. And for the supplemental requests, it totals 329,769, all from the credit union fee fund. The requests are driven by the agency anticipating reductions in federal support from the National Credit Union Administration, or NCUA, which has historically provided examiner training and examination software and staffing support through the Shared Insurance Fund. I note that about $143,000 of the supplemental request is part of that contingency of the NCUA providing support or not. And note that the increase or the agency request will be partly funded through fees from the interstate merger of the Premier Members Credit Union with the Merit Trust Credit Union. So the merger of Merit Trust Credit Union. As the Merit Trust is required to pay fees, assets located in Kansas, the agency is expecting $250,000 in FY26. Once again, that will partly cover the agency's requests. If you could please turn your attention to page 10 for the item number 2, the examiner training. The agency requests $58,000 to replace the NCUA provided examiner training and access to federal STEP program and related curriculum. If discontinued, some state examiners have already been putting on wait lists, and there's potential concerns about maintaining required qualifications. For item 3, examination software, the agency requests $85,000 for third-party examination software if the NCUA discontinues the state access to its current system known as Merit, and continued access remains uncertain and pending federal review. Item number 4 is the examiner's salaries, $186,769 to fund 2 vacant financial examiner positions at a current market salary levels. I'm going to note that no additional FTE will be authorized, so the agency already has the FTE. They're just requesting the funding. Each position includes a salary of $65,000 and benefits of $28,385 for a total of $93,385 per position. And I'm going to note for the all other adjustments, no net increase. There was no net increase or change above the agency's approved budget for FY 2026. Madam Chair, any questions for FY 2026?
Questions, anybody? Let's just go ahead and do 27, please.
So if you could please turn your attention to page 11 for the FY 27 analysis. So for item 1, the FY 2027 approved budget for the Kansas Department of Credit Unions totals 1.4 million with 12 FTE positions. Note that the revised estimate for the agency is 1.7 million. And this includes enhancement requests of $352,013, all from the credit union fee fund. I'm going to note that this request is similar to the FY 2026 supplemental request, but it includes the 2025 legislative pay plan, which is the $22,244. So that's the difference. And a note for revenue for the enhancement, the agency expects the FY 2027 fee receipts from the Merit Trust Credit Union to be about $354,000, which would help cover the enhancement request. On page 12, we notes all other adjustments. Once again, there is no net change above the agency-approved budget for FY 2027 other than the enhancements. And I'm gonna note on page 13, we have the fees. On the first table for the .2, that represents fee rate applied to the credit union's total assets to calculate its annual examination fee. It's a rate. And once again, there's the rest of the fees on page 13 and 14. And any questions for FY 2027, Madam Chairwoman?
Thank you, Ariana. Are there any questions from the committee about the Department of Credit Union's budget? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm trying to follow, it seems like they're anticipating some reduction in funds that they've received previously, but that's uncertain, is that correct? We don't know that there is going to be a reduction? It says anticipated reduction. I'm trying to find where I first saw that.
I think it was the NCUA contingent upon them funding what they have funded in the past.
Yeah, page
And we
9.
don't know for sure
Yeah.
yet whether that's going to come to fruition for the next 2 years. Is that right, Ariana?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct, Madam Chairman.
And so I guess that would be like for the next 2 years and beyond. So then there would be a discussion and a decision made on, you know, the services that are provided, and now, you know, we're going to, you know, do we make any adjustments there? Are any adjustments required? Or is this something that you know, it's something that we totally necessarily have to do? It looks like, too, that there might be some changes in the training that's provided. And so then, yeah, just trying to figure out how you replace that. And then, those are just some thoughts and comments. But then one last question that I do have is that as they move forward on software and technology needs, I'm just curious on if they're working with OITS.
Madam Chairwoman, first of all, I'm going to apologize that the administrator of the Department of Credit Unions is here, Ms. Julie Murray. For that question, I might have to defer to the agency if possible.
That's great. Any other budget number questions for Ariana? I do have a question on page 5. The contractual services takes a pretty healthy, well, actually, it's a decrease. What are they not using for contract services that would decrease that by that much, by 42,000?
Madam Chairwoman, I'm going to first note for FY 2026 and FY 2027, the agency supplemental enhancement requests are part of that contractual services. That explains some of the increase there. But I can dive deeper into that, but that's part of the supplemental enhancement requests are in part in contractual services for the training and the software.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ariana? If not, thank you very much. And I need to. Now we will hear from, I don't have a name for the credit union, if you could.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Am I on? Yes, okay. Julie Murray, M-U-R-R-A-Y. Okay. Oh, I know. Okay. Okay, so I'm Julie Murray. I don't know if, I think I've met all of you, but you may not remember me from last year. I'm the administrator from the Department of the Credit Unions. And I'm going to be really brief this morning. I have a very unusual request, I understand, and I really just want to talk to those supplementals. These are contingencies. My hope is that I don't have to spend them. But what has happened at the federal level has affected us and could affect us further. We don't get direct funds from the NCUA, but what they do is we work with them. We're a little different from the banking department in that case. We actually do some of our examinations in tandem with them. You know, they'll bring examiners and we'll bring examiners, and we actually use software that they pay for. And so they had a reduction in force of about 27% over this last year. So we know they have fewer boots on the ground. We know already that they're going to participate in fewer exams. We don't know where there's going to be a bottom to this. And so what I've done is build in contingencies for like the worst case scenarios here. We are fee funded. With the additional revenue that we're getting this year from that Merit Trust merger, we can afford to do this. We're not asking for any additional funds. If you look at our history, we generally stay under our budget. I don't like to spend money if I don't have to. And so my hope is that none of this comes to fruition. Salaries and compensation, I've slowly, we were very understaffed when I started as an examiner. We've slowly moved towards 6 examiners on the ground. I wasn't convinced we needed the 8, so we've kind of been moving towards that. I thought maybe we needed 7 of the 8. It's very likely we'll need to fill all those positions. Our pay bands have changed. We haven't really adjusted that in our budget. So with the talent that's come on the market with the federal drawdowns, we would be looking at being able to hire people that are not entry level. And so we would need a little more money to do that. It was a good thing for us, but it'll cost us more. The computer software, what I do know is that the federal agency is doing some feasibility studies on their merit. If it goes away, if they choose to do something else, there's a pretty good likelihood that they'll look at licensing fees and in their current economic, situation, think that they need to cut us off. And so we need to be able to fill that. And then the last one was travel, or not travel, training. They do train us. It's in their interest to train us because that way we work in their direction. But again, things are changing on their level. And so asking for all these things will just give me the ability to move quickly if things do happen. The Division of Budget from DFA, they ask us to prioritize things. And so if you were to ask me that question, I would say that the software line item is probably the one I want to have on hand. And the reason that I say that is we have 45 states have state chartered credit unions, and 41 of those use this merit program. So if it goes away, we're all going to be in line trying to get some software. And if I have the money at the ready, I can get in a negotiation and we can move smoother along. The other 2, I understand there's a mechanism that I could go to budget and we could talk about the shortfall and they could come to an interim committee. I think that there's a way around that. But the computer software, I really would like to have. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope it was coherent, that you could follow my thoughts. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Any questions? Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Julie. I'll ask you the same question we asked the Bank Commission, which was, do you see any, what trends are you seeing in the credit unions? And in particular, I think interest rates are a little less than they were a year ago, but are you seeing trends? What's the health of the Kansas credit unions right now?
Madam Chair, so actually, if we look at this year over last year, our credit unions are healthier. Our last year, we had large adjustments to the interest rate changes that happened so quickly, and it took the credit unions a year to get refocused. So our return on assets, our income levels are up, their net worth has grown, delinquency is increasing. But they're required to have an offset account for that. They've looked at different ways to handle that. And it's interesting that it's not in every credit union. And there are some that, a lot of times our smaller credit unions, they have a more intimate relationship with their members, so they have lower delinquency. But overall, the health is actually empirically, just looking at the numbers, in a little better place than it was last year.
Any other questions? Representative Curtis?
I know on the training, you're relying on, who is it? The feds, the NCUA to do some of that. Are there other options out there that you're kind of exploring, or is it kind of a wait and see, and hopefully that some of that doesn't go away?
Madam Chair, so the national organization that we belong to is NASCUS, National Association of State Chartered Credit Union Supervisors. Okay. They are looking at the concern as well, and they're looking at ways to fill in. So there will be fees associated with that. I'm gonna pick on Amber here. So Amber is new to our agency. She's what we would call our deputy. She came to us through the NCUA, and she's been trained fully by them. So we actually might have a little pitch hitter here. So we've got a little more help than we planned on when I prepared all of this. But yeah, there are some agencies out there that we would have an out-of-pocket cost for.
Any other questions?
Why the transition, or why the changes, do you think? And why, as far as the funding, as far as financial health, I mean, what do you think is prompting that?
Are we talking about the federal funding to us? The administration changed. They're looking at efficiencies, and they've gone through all of the agencies and made recommendations, and they're following suit. And, it will just affect all of the states and the agencies. And we're in a fortunate position in our agency that we do have the money to step up. So I'm grateful for that. But I see what they're doing. My husband's a federal employee, I understand.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. And I have a lot of value for credit unions because they often serve populations that our other financial institutions do not. So I appreciate what you do.
Any other questions? I've got a couple. Do you have a copy of this budget? On page 6, it was reported at the bottom under capital outlay that a vehicle was purchased. Can you enlighten me on where that is?
All right. So okay, now that I found it, so the question is, I don't think I understand your
I
question.
think it was reported in the capital outlay somewhere that a vehicle was purchased.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering, where does it show that?
Under equipment and furniture? Is that what you're asking? That line item?
Is that where it came out of?
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Okay, so the equipment you consider a car.
Yeah, that's,
Okay. And, so when will you know from the NCUA? Do you have any idea on that funding?
so when we talked to the regional director, she's still in the process where she's saying things change every day. They did, I've heard of, they did a December restructuring in some organizations. It's just, we don't know when it's done. My thought on this is that these are contingencies that I would like to hold in reserve for the next couple of years while everything kind of shakes out on the federal level. If we're in a status quo where we get to keep all of these things, then what we'll do as an agency is we'll not use them, we'll not need them, we'll we're going to have to do a fee reduction to our credit unions. I've already floated that out at our council meetings, talked to some of our credit union CEOs about it. You know, we felt like the right thing to do here is ask for these in case we need them. And then if the need goes away, then we don't need that much money and we'll give it back.
Okay. And so you're saying that for 2026, this merger of Premier Members Credit Union with Meritrust, that's going to produce the funds that would cover this for 26, these other expenses, the examiner training and the software and the 2 new examiners.
We've received their first installment for this year. We did a reduced amount because it wasn't an entire year. So we prorated it. So we know exactly what we're expecting going forward. So yeah, the first year it's a little short, but our fee fund is pretty healthy. But then going forward, it's more than enough.
Okay, and is that a one-time deal, this merger money? Or they pay that every year now that they're part of a foreign-owned deal? Okay, that was a big, yeah, that was a big one. And then back on the budget on page, I had it in my, you were asking for 2 administrative assistants. Here we go, page 10. The agency has 1 administrator, 1 financial examiner, administrator, and the 6 current financial examiners, and you're looking to do 2 more. The administrative officer, what's the role, and administrative specialist, what do they do?
Our administrative officer, she runs the show. She handles travel vouchers. She is our HR contact. She works with OITS to coordinate all of our needs there. She handles our procurements. She pretty much does all of the necessary back office things for us. And then our administrative specialist is more like what you would consider like answering the phone calls, doing the scanning, the filing, things like that.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for the Department of Credit Unions? If not, we'll close the hearing on that.
Thank you very much.
And we will move to, I really should just put this one page up front, to the Kansas Board of Veterinary Examiners. Luke, if you'll give us the rundown on the budget, then we'll hear from the department, the agency.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. My name is Luke Drury. I am a fiscal analyst with Legislative Research. I do just want to note quickly, Madam Chair, you had a question on page 6 on that, the expenditures by classification for the credit unions. I like to think of that section as kind of some expenditure families. So what Legislative Research does is there are hundreds of different expenditure codes that are in the accounting system. And so there are some that are kind of alike. I call them expenditure families. And so those got rolled together for you. Traditionally, or sometimes you'll see only contractual services, but this year, in an effort to bring some more detail, you are seeing a breakdown further into some of those expenditure families. So that's why you had a situation where a vehicle may show up with furniture and equipment, and they're similar, but also not. So kind of a close cousins, I guess you could put, or cousins in the realm of expenditure families.
Expenses, thank you.
So, all right, and now moving over to the Board of Veterinary Examiners. I would note that the Executive Director, Mark Olson, is with us today, and he does plan to address the committee after I get through my budget summary. By this time, Madam Chair, members of the committee, you will be familiar with the general format of the budget summary. Page 1 is a brief explanation of what the Board of Veterinary Examiners does, along with actual expenditures for 24 and 25 approved, and the request for 26 and 27. If you flip over to page 2, you will see what is called the Budget and Policy Snapshot, sort of a very quick look at those changes that are occurring in the agency. for 26, there's nothing significant with the veterinary examiners. 2027, there is a legislative pay plan item in there, and I will explain that more when we get to when we get to FY 2027. If you flip over onto page 3, again, these are the standard charts that are included in the budget summaries for this year. This shows expenditures across a 10-year period for the agency, along with the percent change year over year and as it relates to the CPIU. Flipping over again onto page 4, same general idea here, although you are able to see now a little bit more detail as it relates to those expenditure codes for salaries and wages and contractual services and whatnot. Flipping over again one more time onto page 5 is the state operations. This is where you will get a bit more detail, Madam Chair, members of the committee, of what the agency's request and where the expenditures lie. As you can see at the top of the page here, you have of the 2026 request from the agency, about 78.7% is for salaries and wages. That does include your fringe benefit rates. So that's not just individual pay. That's for your Social Security, your group health insurance, your capers, et cetera. And then you will see as you move down into contractual services, you'll see fees for professional services there at 9.2%. Those typically relate to those different fees that typically relate to more, I like to think of it as like your CPAs or your investigators, items like that, more specialized. Other services is typically where you'll see like trainings, items like that. And so here's just a little bit more detail for the committee. As you can see, the breakdown of expenditures across the agency. I then want to turn your attention to page number 7. That's the examiner's fee fund. This shows you a breakdown of what the beginning balances were in 24-25 and what they are estimated, ending balances are estimated to be for 26 and 27. As you can see, Madam Chair, members of the committee, the ending balance for the veterinary examiner's fee fund has remained fairly stable over the last several fiscal years. However, you will note there is a reduction that is estimating to occur from 2025 as it relates to 26 and 27. You can see those balances are trending down. However, still not going below $200,000 in that account. When you flip over onto page 8, you will see how the agency is funded. And these are from fees that are placed on practitioners in the field of veterinary medicine. So different fees as it relates to late penalty fees, premises fees, inspections, et cetera. The current fee is indicated there for FY 2026, along with the statutory maximum or limit for those particular fees are included for the committee's reference as well. Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you flip to page number 9, that is the beginning of the FY 2026 analysis, and it is, as you can see, it is rather short. Item number 1 is what was approved for this agency by the 2025 legislature, and that number was $413,050, all from the veterinary examiner's fee fund. The board does not request any changes to that number for 2026, nor to the number for FTEs of 3.8. Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you flip over to your final page, page 10, that is where you will see the FY 2027 analysis, and that would include item number, starting up at the top of the page there is the FY 2027 approved. I would note, Madam Chair, that this is a biennial agency. That is to say that they have approved budgets for FY 2026 and FY 2027, whereas most other agencies do not have a 2027 approved number. So as you can see there, the number was about $412,000 for this agency in 2027. The change here is that roughly $7,000 for the legislative pay plan. I would note that when it came to implementing the salary pay plan for our biennial agencies, there were some inadvertent omissions, and that includes about $7,000 to increase the the expenditure limitation for the fund so that the agency can meet those salary obligations. Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions, or as I mentioned earlier as well, Dr. Olson is here with us today, and he can certainly address the committee.
Thank you, Luke. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have questions, but I think they're probably mostly for the agency. They're not really, they're somewhat related more to, function than numbers.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Olson, are you in the building? I thought I saw you walk in. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Mark Olson. I'm the Executive Director for the Kansas Board of Veterinary Examiners. It is a privilege to be in this position and work for the great profession that I've been a part of for 44 years. We're here to explain and answer any questions about the 2026-2027 budget and any other questions that you might want to have. The main mission of the Board of Veterinary Examiners, it was established by the Kansas Legislature in 1907 to protect the public. We don't protect the profession, we protect the public. The profession is part of the public, and in Kansas we have a little less than 3 million people. And as you can see in my report from our statistics and from the map that was provided to you, in Kansas we have 1,813 residing veterinarians, and you can see the makeup of where those are at in each county. We have 105 counties in Kansas, and of those 105 counties, we have veterinarians residing in 101 counties, and you can see which 4 counties don't have anybody living there, but veterinary medical services provided by neighboring counties, and so we're privileged that we don't have a big area with a major shortage in. Obviously, as we move forward in life, things change. And as we deal with more urbanization and less people living in rural America, one of the things that the Board of Veterinary Examiners does is license veterinarians. We register veterinary technicians, and we register veterinary premises. Those privileged people that are licensed or registered to work on client-owned animals in Kansas. In order to work on a client-owned animals, you need to have a license and you need to be registered to work as a technician under a veterinarian. A veterinarian that is not licensed is considered unlicensed, or any layperson that wants to work on other people's animals, that is unlicensed practice of veterinary medicine, and that is not allowed in Kansas. There are some states that allow certain things to be done by unlicensed people, but Kansas does not allow that. We have had several, on an average, we'll have between 80 and 100 complaints a year, and of those complaints, I would say 10% of those to 15% involve unlicensed practice. And our agency has a full-time investigator that investigates those cases. We have a full-time inspector that inspects all the premises. I have a full-time office administrative specialist that handles the licensing and the license verifications. And then my position moved from a full-time position to 8/10 here a few years ago due to the economics of the fee-funded agency. All of our income is based on fee funding, and so with that, we don't have any recommended changes for 2026, and for 2027, we don't have any recommendations internally, but we are very appreciative, and our staff is very appreciative, to be able to retain staff of the salary and benefit increases that have been allowed through the governor, through the legislature over these last 4 years. Actually, it's allowed me to retain all my staff Whereas if we wouldn't have had those, I would have lost some of my staff. So I share that with you. And with that, I will stand for questions about the budget or anything else related to our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olson. Questions? Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So your map of veterinarians, does this include all of our vets? Because I showed this map last year and somebody said, well, those do not include vets perhaps that are employed by a corporate entity. They may not show up in this count, but does it include those as well?
This includes every licensed veterinarian in Kansas.
Okay.
So and that would include anyone that works on client-owned animals.
Okay.
If you call me to work on your animals, you would be a client that you would choose me to do your work. You have to have a license. Corporations that work on client-owned animals require everyone to be licensed. If they are doing research in the back in a research facility, and they're not working on client-owned animals, they may not need to be licensed.
Okay.
Or in academia, if you teach, but you don't work on animals, in anatomy and physiology and pathology, in the teaching of the first and second year students, you could be a veterinarian and you would not need a license. But if you touch animals, somebody else's animals, or you work on specimens in the diagnostic lab that involve things from clients, you are required to be licensed. This would not include inactive veterinarians that choose not to keep a license.
Sure. Okay.
Now, with this is just the Kansas map.
Right.
But if you look on the back page of the handout I sent to you, there were 2,670 license renewals this year, plus 181 new licenses. So we have over 2,800, between 2,800 and 2,900 Kansas licensed veterinarians, but a little over 1,000 of those live out of state. They work they are in other states.
Gotcha.
And they're not on this map.
Okay.
These are the ones that just live in Kansas. And then we have a little over 1,000 that live in other jurisdictions outside of Kansas. And they might come in and consult in Kansas. They might have graduated from K-State and have kept their license, and they plan to come back and retire and they keep their license. So just to break it out, there's 1,813 that live in Kansas with an active license, and there's between 1,000 and 1,050 that live out of state. So that is, hopefully that answers your question.
And this 181 new veterinarian, is that up from what we usually see year over year?
I've been with the agency for 4 years, and it's been running between 160 and 180 a year.
Okay.
And that breakout is around 40 out of Kansas State University. The class of 120 will get around 40. We might get a few more. One year we had 50 or 51. The goal of the school is to get 60, half of those students to be staying in Kansas with a Kansas license. We'll have other colleges, graduates, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, any veterinary school in the country, and they may get hired to work in Kansas. So they would be part of that. I would say of the 180, 100 to 110 are new students that get their license for the first time, and the balance of those are those that have been in other states and take a job in Kansas and come into Kansas.
Okay, well,
roughly.
Yeah,
roughly. That could vary just a little.
Yeah, that's good to know. On license, you license both veterinarians and vet techs.
We register veterinary technicians, yes.
So do other states have another, in between veterinarians and vet techs? Is there another category there that allows more veterinarian medicine to be provided, but perhaps not by all veterinarians?
The answer to that question, if I may, Madam Chair, is yes.
Okay.
Veterinary technicians can be credentialed 3 ways. They can be registered, Kansas registers, about a third of the states register them to work under the supervision of a licensed veterinarian, direct or indirect. We have states that license technicians, but they can't go out on their own. They have to work under a veterinarian. And let's see, there's licensing, registration. There is a third one. I'm going blank on it right this minute, but it'll come. And then I think the question that you're bringing up, just in the last couple years, there was a bill that went to the Colorado Legislature to, it was brought in by outside groups, not the veterinary profession, not the veterinarians of the state, but outside entities wanted, they have so many people moving into Colorado with animals from California and other states that they didn't feel like they had enough veterinary services. So a bill was introduced 2 years ago to the Colorado Legislature to see if they could have a veterinary practitioner associate. And that would be like a nurse practitioner in human medicine, like a physician's assistant. And that failed. That failed initially. Well, those groups went to the general and got to the general ballot and got enough names on a petition to put that on a ballot for the general election a year ago, November. And that passed 51% to 49%. So there was no credentialing, there was no educational plan, there was no curriculum. It passed, and then all of a sudden, they had to determine what a veterinary professional associate would look like. So, of course, the Colorado Board of Veterinary Examiners, our equivalent, they're scrambling. They had to have a group develop an exam. They had to develop a curriculum, and those kids are starting, I believe, this fall for either a 2 or 3 year period of time. But to further answer your question, which I think is important for you in the Kansas legislature, how does everybody else feel about that? And what are the pros and cons of that? The American Veterinary Medical Association, which is the national organization for the veterinarians, and the American Association of Veterinary State Boards, which is the association for all of our life boards, did a national survey over the last 3 to 5 years. And the report showed that we were not utilizing veterinary technicians to their full ability. And it was defeated. And the question was, do we need a mid-level practitioner in veterinary medicine? And it was loud and clear from all the entities, from the technician schools to the veterinary schools to the population, that we need to better utilize the people we have than reinvent a new title, so to speak. So, and you know, when human medicine went to the nurse practitioner and the PA, there were challenges with all that. But right now, the only state that has a mid-level practitioner is Colorado. They don't have anybody licensed yet because they're just starting their first class. And you can imagine the repercussions of what's going on there. Might have been more than you wanted, but
No,
I think that's helpful information.
I appreciate that. So maybe Colorado can be the experiment, and after they figure it out and get all the kinks worked out, then maybe we can revisit that. But this is coming to me through some of the folks that I have been working with on shelter medicine and dealing particularly with some of our animal services and trying to somehow address the overpopulation of pets that we have. And so that came to me through them is how can we better utilize, and is there like a vet tech 1, a vet tech 2, or something, that could be considered to expand?
Level levels of veterinary technician.
I didn't know that, and so perhaps could you send me that information? Okay.
Just quickly, there's a registered veterinary technician that goes 2 years. There's a graduate veterinary technician that goes 3 years. And then there's a licensed veterinary technologist that is a bachelor's degree 4-year program. But as you talk about, if I may, if you talk about shelter medicine, which is one gamut that needs care, the other side of it is I'm in agriculture. And as we look at our food supply and as we look at wholesome protein, whatever your preference is, whether it's whether it's hogs or beef or chickens or turkeys, poultry, whatever, who do you want working on those animals? You want someone that doesn't have all the science and surgery and medicine training, sending food to the food supply as a technician or as a mid-level practitioner versus the veterinarian that has the most understanding about that, and that's always the scenario to consider. That's not what this topic is about. I'm off track just a little bit, but I also feel Kansas, what is their greatest strength economically? Agriculture. Agriculture is where it's driven, and we cannot forget what our greatest revenue resource is. So,
Do you see concern of transmission? Are you guys tracking that, like disease transmission?
we work with the Kansas Department of Agriculture.
Okay, yeah.
As
As
our
part of
sister
that.
organization. They are identified initially of any disease problems, but obviously, if there's anything that's been done that is below the bar in regards to the licensing, then we're notified to deal with that also. So we work together with them. But it's not a very big problem.
Any other questions? Representative Bloom.
Madam Chair, Dr. Olson, I've heard from a lot of old vets, a lot of young vets. It seems like there's kind of a mini war going on in your board. Rules, regulations, responsibilities that are being changed. The old vets do not want it. The young vets do want it. Can you tell us what's happening?
It depends on what, for Kansas, I assume you're asking. You're asking for the
Yes,
state of Kansas?
my office mate is a veterinarian, and I hear about it just about every day, and he's very, very much against it. And then the younger ones want whatever you're doing. Can you explain this, what's going on?
Well, I think the simple answer to the question is the Practice Act hasn't been modernized for 30 years. And you look at how many veterinarians are practicing more than 30 years. I happen to practice part-time still. I've been out 44 years. But the times change, things change. And back when veterinarians have been out 30, 40, 50 years ago, we were a predominantly male occupation. Now we're predominantly female. And in regards to rules and regs, to run an efficient business, the cost of doing business 30 or 40, 50 years ago was very low compared to what it costs to do business today. And it's more efficient to run a practice with having a technician doing some of the things that a veterinarian can do within the practice while they're working with other clients. And the older school people, they will just think the only ones that can touch an animal is a veterinarian. And so that's where the rubber meets the road. I think where the bottom line comes to in regards to your question, as long as the licensed veterinarian is the decision maker for the entire staff, whether they're the receptionist, the kennel person, the 2-year technician, the high school grad that became a technician in their practice, or they're a veterinarian, as long as the veterinary client-patient relationship remains between the client and the veterinarian, and then the scope of work for those people underneath is left to the veterinarian, I think we can bring this together. If we start line item everything, it's going to be hard to bring everybody together. So we want to keep our rules and regs more simple and let the veterinarian make that decision as well.
This be a big change or the way it's always been?
That's how it is right now.
And it's been this way for
It's
30
been that
years.
way, and I don't see that changing. I don't see that changing because we have almost 5 different generations of veterinarians out there, and it's easier to bring all you people together than it is to get common ground between the profession. And that's just where we're at, because the younger generation wants it clear over here and the older generation wants it clear over here. And so we have to leave it up to the veterinarian because we can't come together to change that. We don't want to change the rules and regs. We just want to modernize the statutes so that we can continue to protect the public and not have outside telemedicine groups coming in and doing work on animals that they never touch. And right now, we're having a difficult time bringing everybody together for that. And we believe the legislature will support what we have to bring, but we just have to find someone to help us introduce that bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olson. Any other questions for the good doctor? Representative Carlin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I don't know where I saw it. I was trying to find it as you were speaking, but I saw 1,000 out-of-state licenses.
Yes.
Can you tell me how that's increased over this last, well, you've been there 4 years, but maybe 10 years? Have you seen it? I mean, do you know?
I've been here 4 years and it wasn't tracked before. I started tracking it since I came, so I can't answer that for sure, but I can tell you the number of overall licenses in Kansas over the last 10 years has, with whether it's out of state or in state, has run between 2,500 to where we're at now, 2,800.
So it's been pretty stable since you've been there?
Yeah, it hasn't gone down.
Because I ask that question often, and I think I started here in '06, so.
We are tracking. We're going to get a new software, thanks to the state of Kansas, for our licensing software that'll go live in April. And we're going to be able to track when we project when people are going to be retiring so that we know what our outflow is and our inflow is coming in. Because honestly, if we're underserved or properly served, it used to be in the 80s, 70s and 80s, every graduate from K-State got a Kansas license, whether they stayed in state or not. And now we've only got about a third to best case scenario half that are getting licenses. And so that's our revenue stream, and that's concerning.
They probably fall off as they don't come back.
That's right. And the other challenge is corporate veterinary medicine buys the debt when they get into school and they go to work for them, and then they're told how to run a practice instead of how they should run a practice. So there's challenges there too.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anything else for the good doctor? Thank you very much. Any other comments about the Board of Veterinary Examiners budget? Concerns, anything? It's pretty simple. Okay, thank you. With that, we will close the hearing on the Board of Veterinary Examiners, and we will go to the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board. Luke, please do the honors.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I am still Luke Drury, fiscal analyst with Legislative Research, and I will be presenting the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board budget to you all this afternoon. I would note that Joseph Straub is here in the committee today, Consumer Counsel for CURB, and does plan to address the committee upon the conclusion of my budget summary. Again, page number 1 here does give a brief, executive summary of what Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board does, along with a table there that shows what actual expenditures were for the last several fiscal years, along with the approved budget and the agency's request. There's also the pie chart there does show you in relation to expenditures from other general government agencies, where does the curb fall. If you flip over onto page number 2, that is the budget and policy snapshot. I would note that I will go into each one of these in more detail as we get to FY 2026 and FY 2027. However, you will see some items here that includes fee for professional services, and then you will also notice that there are some expenditures that relate to implementing recommendations from a recent legislative post-audit audit. If you flip over onto page number 3, you will see a 10-year summary of expenditures as it relates to all expenditures for the agency from FY 2028 through FY 2027. And you will see and notice here that there is some increases in expenditures that have occurred over time. I would note there as well that you also see an FTE change from FY 2022 to FY 2023. You do see an additional 2 FTE coming on to the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board budget. If you flip over onto page number 4, this is again a 10-year expenditure chart of agency expenditures and request. However, you are getting a bit more detail here, breaking it down to salaries and wages, contractual services, and others. Finally, flipping over onto page 5, some background information here. I shouldn't say background, some more detailed information. Similar to the expenditures from the Board of Veterinary Examiners, about 70% of expenditures for the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board do relate to salaries and wages. Again, that's not just salaries for personnel. That includes your fringe benefit costs, capers, group health insurance, and the like. Next, Madam Chair and members of the committee, if you look under fees for professional services, you will see that's at 17.9% of the agency's 2026 request. For this particular agency, what that is going to mostly include are the hiring and retention of outside professional groups to help the board examine rate cases. So the board will do internal work on those rate cases, but then they also do utilize outside contracts to assist, whether it be expert testimony, analysis, that sort of thing. So that's where you will see those expenditures show up for the agency. Flipping over onto page number 6, that is an examination of the CURB's fee fund balances. As you can see, Madam Chair, members of the committee, their fee fund balances are trending downwards from FY 2024 to and through FY 2027. You do see a little bit of an uptick there. I would note that revenues for CURB can come in 2 different ways. That first one you see there is the assessed quarterly levy. That is an amount that CURB can assess to the public utilities. I would also note as well that you do have a recovery of expenditures. My working knowledge of that is essentially that if CURB is doing a rate case or looking at a particular utility, the amount of time, staff hours, and expenditures that they had related to that very particular inquiry in that particular utility, they can charge the utility for that. So that's where you see those 2 different views of expenditures coming into the agency. Madam Chair and members of the committee, if you flip over onto page number 7, that is the beginning of the FY 2026 analysis. Item number 1 there is the amount that was approved by the 2025 legislature. That's $1.4 million. I would note this is again a fee-funded agency, entirely funded through the Utility Regulatory Fee Fund. Item number 2 is that fees for professional services. CURB is an agency that does have language in the appropriations bill that functions somewhat as a reappropriations authority. Admittedly, I've not seen other agencies with this sort of language for a fee fund. If they have unexpended balances for fees for professional services in a given fiscal year, that amount that was budgeted can be rolled over into the new fiscal year and applied to the budget to assist with professional service expenditures. For FY 2025, the agency did not spend roughly $1,700, so therefore those monies rolled forward into the current year, FY 2026, and may be applied towards fee for professional services. Madam Chair and members of the committee, the agency also does have 9 FTE positions, and there is no change requested there. Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you flip over onto page 8 is the FY 2027 analysis. There are several more changes here than in comparison to FY 2026. The amount that was approved for the agency in FY 2026 that is our starting point here at the top of this table was 1.4. From there, changes are identified. I would note for the committee that this will read that the top table and the numbers and narratives below do match up. So item number 1 on the table does match with the narrative below item number 1. Fees for professional services, that is that first one. There is an increase in the budget of about $75,000 from the regulatory fee fund for professional services. The agency does estimate that those rates that they pay for consultants and other professional services are going to increase in FY 2027 as it compares to FY 2026. Capital outlay is item number 2. As I noted at the forefront of this budget summary, there was a legislative division of post audit that was done on not only the CURB but also the KCC. And as a result of that audit, to implement some of the recommendations, there is expenditures there of about $29,000 for capital outlay. Madam Chair, members of the committee, it may come as no surprise to you, but I was able to find the legislative post-audit on the website. However, when I clicked on it, I was told, no, I cannot go here. So I cannot tell you exactly what was in the audit, what those findings were, but I can tell you that audit is out there and has been completed and has been reviewed by the Legislative Post-Audit Committee. Item number 3, OITS fees. Again, that is going to be related to some of those audit expenditures, excuse me, not audit findings. That's about $25,000 increased expenditures as it relates to OITS fees. Other fees and services is about $11,000. This is going to relate to employee training and orientation, again, to help implement some of those recommendations from the security audit. Madam Chair and members of the committee, if you flip over to page number 9, we are now out of those expenditures as it relates to the LPA audit. Item number 5 is group health insurance. There is an increase there of about $10,000. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I would note that it is not just unique to CURB for this particular increase in expenditures. The cost indices that are produced each year by the Department of Administration do estimate that the employer contribution cost for group health insurance will increase, and so as a result of that, CURB will be having higher expenditures for group health insurance for their employees. Item number 6 is all other adjustments. As the committee may know by now, I do call these the rats and cats. Those are those items that make up different expenditures here and there. Added together. That is an increase of about $84. Those increases are attributable to some commodity expenditures, more specifically professional scientific supplies and contractual services, such as software maintenance. Some of that is offset by CAPER's contributions. So that is to say, Madam Chair and members of the committee, that as D of A puts together those cost indices for group health insurance, part of those cost indices did include a reduction in employer contributions for CAPERs. So that is included here. Madam Chair, I would be more than happy to stand for questions for the committee, or as I indicated, Joseph Estrab is here with, he's the Consumer Counsel for CURB, and he does have a presentation and can certainly address the committee at this time.
Thank you, Luke. Representative Carlin.
Luke, What is the reduction in capers? And is that going to be showing up in other agencies?
Madam Chair, Representative, I would anticipate, yes, that will be showing up in other agencies. That is because it is part of the cost indices. Cost indices, again, are produced by D of A. It is essentially a long table of indices that show different estimations for various different expenditures. Gasoline, surcharges on certain buildings, rent expenditures. And so it's not just limited to just capers, but although fringe benefit rates are included in there as well, not just group health insurance, but you've got unemployment, FICA, all the other different fringes that include in there. And I can't speak to exactly why the capers rate was changed, but I can tell you that as a part of going through those estimates for expenditures for agencies, Department of Administration does estimate for those employer contributions to decrease in FY 2027.
Can you tell me then, is it because of the cost of operating the capers program that it's decreasing, or is somebody saying we're going to cut our contribution to capers?
Madam Chair, Representative, the second part of that, to cut the contribution for capers, I do not believe is correct. It has more to do with the I always struggle with this word, actuarial liabilities. Let me follow up with our office. I should be able to get an answer relatively quickly, and then I can address the committee at that point to find out specifically.
Because I've never seen that except when we have just not had the money and didn't pay it. And so that's what I'm asking. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the bringer of the curb budget? Seeing none, thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Joseph Straub with the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board. Welcome to committee.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Joseph Astrab. Oh, I don't need the slides up. I don't need them up. Thank you, though. My name is Joseph Astrab, and I'm the Consumer Counsel for the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board, better known as CURB. First and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to talk about CURB, present our budget today, and we appreciate your time. As Luke mentioned earlier, CURB is the statutory agency dedicated to representing the interest of residential and small commercial ratepayers in utility-related cases in Kansas. And so, as you'll hear from next, the Kansas Corporation Commission is in charge of regulating the rates, rules, and terms of utility services for jurisdictional utilities. That include big utilities like Evergy and Kansas Gas Services. What it does not include is municipalities or certain cooperatives, rural water districts we're not normally involved with. And so, although they are related to utility services, our statutory mandate is confined to the services regarding jurisdictional utilities regulated by the KCC. And so today what I presented is a performance-based budgeting metric presentation. This was developed by legislative research to kind of help quantify what are the costs and benefits of our agency. As noted earlier by Luke, we are a completely fee-funded agency that's typically assessed and recovered from ratepayers in Kansas through utility bills. And so in order to kind of demonstrate what Kansans are paying for with utility service, we take track of these metrics and present our findings to help kind of demonstrate what value our agency provides to this process. So I'll open it up now. You can follow along with me. I provide a short overview and summary of the presentation for future references and ease of use, so we can pass through that. On to page 3 now. This is a metric table that provides a breakdown of the different metrics that legislative research has provided that we utilize. The far right column, the program costs and benefits, I think that's kind of the meat of that presentation, where it kind of gives you the breakdown of what our costs we incurred for providing services and different results, both in terms of rate cases and orders there, and also just a comparison of savings from our agency compared to hiring outside private attorneys, analysts to do the full-time work that we do. So as you can tell, though, there are pretty big comparisons of numbers, both in terms of rate case savings and also just savings of our agency being in existence versus having to go out and hire attorneys to do the job for us whenever an issue arises. Turning on to page 4 now, this brings us to the series of charts and tables and breakdowns of our metrics. So this first one here breaks down the kind of key performance measures that we utilize at CURB to measure our work and what we do. As you can see there, KCC dockets, that is, cases filed by utilities that are heard before the KCC, take up the bulk of our work. And so that's where we're in a side of a formal court case, we go through discovery, we provide testimony and arguments, even all the way through litigation like you would see in a normal court case. Following that, we spend a lot of time on policy work, and that involves both researching and keeping up with current events and issues, but also dealing with other types of cases outside of KCC dockets and their interactions as well. We also spend quite a bit of time with outreach, both from other Kansans, but also different agencies and stakeholders in the utility industry. Turning over now to page 5, this kind of helps highlight and break down some of the costs that we incurred and the different types of rate cases that we experienced in fiscal year 2025. So if you're not familiar with what a rate case is, that's kind of our bread and butter, if you will. It's the main type of case where a utility will provide a full breakdown and audit of their expenses and make a request to adjust their rates, usually up or down. And so these rate cases represent changes to the rates that these specific utilities would charge customers moving forward. As you can see there, we had one from Evergy, Kansas Central, the old Legacy Westar jurisdiction down in southeast Kansas and up along the east side of it. And also Black Hills, a rate case, our natural gas distribution company here on the east side of the state. I also noted another prior Kansas gas service case, that 610 case there. That was a holdover that began in fiscal year 2024, but concluded in 2025, just for, again, illustrative purposes of the rate cases we worked on that time frame. I also included 2 dockets there of note. Although these are not rate cases that directly set rates, these are the type of extra cases that are heard that deals with regulations and approval of new generation assets being built that may eventually be included in customer rates later. And so for these types of cases where the utility is seeking approval or permission to do something, we intervene in those cases and provide analytical analysis, suggestions, modifications, and recommendations to the commission in those cases. So those were very large cases that have pretty big ramifications for the future going forward, and so I wanted to highlight to the committee here and to the legislature this year. Turning over to page 6, this is kind of a more granular review of those rate cases we just talked about, the Evergy and Black Hills one. This provides a breakdown of the savings, and that is a calculation compared to what the initial request of the utility was compared to what the ultimate commission order was. And so in these rate cases, numerous parties, including ks.gov, provide analysis and technical arguments and provide their position about what a result should be. And so through that process, the commission synthesizes all that information and provides a result based on the evidence. And so that's what this number here, the savings number, is a comparison of what the initial request was and what the end result was. Now, it's a little difficult to extricate necessarily what percentage perhaps one group had in reaching a result compared to another. But as you can see here, we're dealing with millions of dollars in terms of ratepayer costs that are being asked to be incurred by them. And so even if you take a more skeptical review of our work and give us only so much credit for it, you can see we're producing a lot of value in these types of rate cases and savings for ratepayers compared to our in-house cost. Turning now to page 7, this gives a breakdown again to the policy work. So this is a very complex and fast-moving industry, even though it may take a long time to recover the cost incurred for building a new plant or something. And so issues are changing all the time. And it's important for ks staff to be up to date, to be knowledgeable and aware, and be able to keep up with other stakeholders, with the utilities, in terms of what's being asked to be paid for by ratepayers. And so we spend time in these different areas studying, improving, interacting with them, and learning, and also contributing to other conversations, not only in Kansas, but around the country as well. And so, Kansas maybe doesn't get a lot of attention in the utility industry as far as flashy or exciting things. You have data centers popping up on the East Coast, and people are talking about that. You have people building nuclear plants in other places. So, Kansas is kind of doing its own thing. And so we think it's time for us to go out and kind of talk to the country and say, hey, look at the cool things we're doing here. Look at the inventive things we're doing here to help save ratepayers money, but also meet our growing energy needs. page 8 here is a breakdown of the metrics over the last 3 fiscal years, and so we provide this comparison to show changes here. One thing I will note, looking at KCC dockets, you do see that there is a pretty sizable increase of hours dedicated towards that from fiscal year 2024 to 2025. This has a lot to do with our change in use of consultants that Luke had mentioned earlier. And so CURB has the uses the Office of Procurement and Contracts to utilize private bidding and for consultant work for outside consultants to help us with rate cases. And so we were fortunate to have a really good contract with a consultant who had really flat fees and rates and kept them pretty low, and they retired last summer. And so in the terms of transitioning to find new consultants to fill that gap, we lean more heavily on our in-house staff, pushing them for their expertise and kind of stepping into those roles to provide that same kind of testimony. So we put a lot more hands-on work into our rate case analysis, and I'm very pleased with the results. This is a very complex and dense field, and so being able to develop people in only a few short years to provide quality testimony and advocacy compared to experts who've had decades in the field is quite an accomplishment. So I'm very proud of our team for the advocacy we were able to do this last fiscal year. And so as we work to kind of transition both to get a full array of consultants again to cover the various issues that we look at in different cases, we're also looking to push our in-house staff to take on those roles, not only to kind of help, build the agency's credibility up, but also to kind of cut costs and save on those. Because as you might expect, over the time that we've had our prior consultants, the market rates for private experts and testimony has gone up. And so it's kind of a shock, which I'll explain more in the 2027 request and why we asked for that increase later on. Moving on to page 9, this is again a breakdown specifically to the KCC dockets, both in terms of the hours worked and number of cases we intervene in. As you can see, fiscal year 2024 and 2025 has seen over 100 new cases that we've been involved with, dockets we were involved with, so work is remaining steady, but we're working to keep our staff levels up to keep up with that workload. The final bits of this presentation, I have a summary of the work we do at the legislature regarding the different bills we provided testimony on, so please feel free to read through that at your leisure to see what happened last year and how we were involved. And the final page provides a similar breakdown of those performance metrics spread out through the fiscal years. I apologize for the small print on the short sizes there, but from an Excel spreadsheet, how it's translated. But that provides a breakdown there. I'll take questions. I can take questions later on about our performance-based budgeting metrics, but I do want to address our expenditure request for fiscal year 2027. And the biggest ticket item there, obviously, is the consultant increase there by $75,000. If you look through our prior budgets, we've had a pretty flat, consistent budget of $250,000 for outside consultant work. And for the most part, our work is dynamic. There's not a set schedule for how many rate cases we may see or what types of cases may need professional consultants to do work. And so, we do our best to maintain that budget and stay within it. Fiscal year 2024 was a pretty big change. We had a pretty significant chunk of carryover, about $86,000 that added to that budget. However, we also saw some pretty significant and intense cases regarding energy efficiency that required a lot of outside consultant work to help work that through and establish an energy efficiency program in Kansas through one of our electric utilities. And so the last fiscal year that we did not have much going for carryover. And so additional cases, including that predetermination case we listed back there, that took up quite a bit of additional budget, and additional rate cases being filed at the same time really pushed us to the limits there. And we were shorted a few consultants due to that retirement midsummer, where our in-house counsel stepped in to help bridge that gap and make sure we stayed within that $250,000 budget. And so looking ahead as we procure new consultants and looking at those rates, we did file this budget before our most recent request for proposals came through, and we got those numbers in. And so we have new consultants signed on for CURB, and we have kind of those figures, and we're comparing them to how that might interact with our budget. And so the $75,000 number was just kind of what we looked at planning ahead before we actually got people to sign on with their costs and everything else too. And so we're hopeful that this should be sufficient. Our goal is not to use the 100% of this budget if we can avoid it. Again, with the fluidity of when the work comes in and how intense it's going to be, it kind of puts different pressures on our budget from year to year. But with the increase in relying upon in-house staff, that should help kind of control cost as well.
Thank you, Joseph. Any questions for Joseph, for Curb? I do have a couple.
Yes.
So you were just talking about professional fees going up back on page 5 and the contract staff. That's what you were talking about, $250,000 a year
Yes.
roughly, but you're gonna ask for an additional 75,000.
Moving forward, yes.
So can you get by with less?
That's the hope, yes. So like I said, when I made the $75,000 number, that was based off of, kind of what we saw in markets, but not without the aid of the request for proposals and those numbers. And so the hope is that with this placeholder number here, we can see what our new consultant budget's going to look like, and then adjust that moving forward for 2028 and beyond. So 2027 there, that was based off one contract we had, that how much it was compared to our previous contract, and then kind of considering, well, if we're going to see increases for different contractors on different subject matters, that's where we come from there.
So that was, you saw the difference between a current contractor and what they're going to charge in
That
the
was like my
future?
market research, like what this person was charging, because typically they keep that to themselves, but for a request for proposal. And so the hope is that once we start, getting these contractors to work and seeing how much of their actual budget they use up when doing our work, that will give us a kind of a better idea of what our new normal might look like for rate cases and other types of things when we're using outside consultants. So I couldn't tell you how much less we could work with in that number, but my goal is to get less than that number.
Okay, on page 4, the expenditures by category in that first box, your capital outlay goes from 8,600 in '26 to 42,700.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes, so as Luke mentioned earlier, the capital outlay from fiscal year 2027, that has to do with the additional equipment and computer services that we are spending in response to that legislative post-audit request. And just to clarify there, that was a post-audit that was not directed towards CURB, but rather to the Kansas Corporation Commission. And so we utilize and share services within their building from the KCC, which includes IT services. And so as part of that audit, they requested KCC kind of divest itself from that connection as like a security type issue. And so in order to replace those services and maintain, kind of operations, these are the costs that we've worked with them and calculated. We've worked together with the KCC and their state approved vendors to get a cost estimate of what that kind of work would look like. And as part of that, I would add too, is we're not trying to train our own employees to run our IT. Rather, we're kind of trying to help defray the cost from KCC IT staff to pay for that, and then having ownership of our own servers, equipment, that kind of thing. And so we're not adding for additional employees to do IT services, but we are considering helping kind of defray the cost of that to train and to utilize this new system.
So this is a new system that was suggested by the legislative post-audit.
Volutold, yeah. So basically, it's suggested and it's kind of required. So, yeah, and again, we weren't the subject of the audit. It's kind of, we were like collateral damage, if you will.
And so what else, I mean, what is this, what do these dollars include purchasing
It
additional?
includes servers, includes software and licensing. It includes kind of the physical equipment, the actual like servers and routers, I believe. And it'll include training for the personnel, and then it'll include like subscription costs and services on a continuing basis after that. And I think I have, let's see here. Yeah, so,
Okay.
Microsoft 360, productivity tools, migration costs to move the system like data from one server to another. Outside my wheelhouse on how they do it, but I just know this is what they're telling me it's going to cost.
Okay. I thought I had another one here somewhere. So why on page 6 in the revenue part, what's going on with the assessed quarterly amounts?
Yes, so as mentioned before, we're state fee funded. And so what our process is with the KCC is we send quarterly assessments to the utilities, and on a quarterly basis per year there. And so that will fluctuate based on the timing of when costs are incurred and when they're approved to be recovered from the KCC based on when a case ends. And so as far as the fluctuation goes itself, it's just kind of a matter of what the work is and when that's actually collected versus when we assess them through the end of, actual rate case and get a commission order to recover those expenditures.
And on your report, on page 9, you've got the number of open KCC dockets for 23, 24, and 25. Are cases carried over, and if so, how many per year? Or are these all brand-new cases every year?
I can clarify. Yes, these are the current open cases, so what we maintain. So as far as our call from open new cases, I believe there were 30 electric ones and about 20 or so, there's about 30 cases total, so I think about 18 electric and 12 gas, I believe, were the new cases that opened up. And so other cases are carrying over. And this includes cases that aren't necessarily being actively worked on, but like our compliance dockets with yearly filings, short audits and reviews. And so those were considered open, but not necessarily actively being worked on or considered by the commission.
So what percentage is new every year? Roughly, I mean?
Roughly, I can say about 20%. Yeah, and as far as rate cases themselves, we typically see about 3 tops a year because they are very intensive and very large. So 2 or 3 rate cases a year itself. But other cases that deal with tariffs, that is the rules and regulations, approvals for new programs, those types of things, those are kind of the remaining KCC cases.
Okay, any questions? If not, thank you, Joseph.
Thank you all very much for your time.
We'll close the hearing on Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board and ask Luke to present the budget for the Kansas Corporation Commission.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Again, I am still Luke Drury, and I'm a fiscal analyst with Legislative Research. I do want to note for the committee, Representative Carlin had asked about the CAPERS reductions, and I can tell you I touched base with our team, and that is because the returns that CAPERS experienced over the last fiscal year were better or higher than expected. And as it relates to that, those employer contributions have went down as a result of some increases there. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I would note that Chair Andrew French of the Corporation Committee is with us today. He is with us via WebEx, and he does plan to address the committee after the conclusion of the budget summary. Page number 1 is an overview of the Corporation Commission. I would note for the committee that the Corporation Commission is also a fee and federal funded agency, similar to all the agencies that have been heard today in the committee. However, the amount of different funds and funding streams for this agency is more. They have more types of expenditures and funding streams. I would note for the committee as well that the expenditures by fiscal year and version table, you will see that the agency is going from $32 million in actual expenditures in 25 to an approved budget of over $132 million. So you're talking adding $100 million in expenditures in one fiscal year. I will talk about that in more detail as we move along, but the committee should be relatively familiar with this, as these are some items that have come up previously over the last several sessions. Madam Chair and members of the committee, if you flip over onto page 2, that is the budget and policy snapshot, FY 2026 and FY 2027. There is a $2 million ARPA amount in there. I'll talk about this a little bit more. This actually resulted from the 2024 legislature, some items there. A reduction in energy rebate estimates in 26. In 27, you also will see ARPA, energy rebates, and grid resilience. And again, Madam Chair, I will talk about those in more detail as I get to the discussion of the changes in FY 26 and 27. If the committee turns over onto page number 3, This is the 10-year summary of expenditures. Again, Madam Chair and members of the committee, you will note here that you are seeing quite an increase. That little line graph looks more like a mountain or a roller coaster. An item number in FY 2023, I would note for the committee, you do see a bunny hill there, if you will, of the orphaned well program. That's what those expenditures come from. When you get into FY 2026 and 2027, that is where some additional monies from the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act are going to be seen. So again, I'll talk about those a little bit in more detail, but that's why you see that change over the last 10 years. Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you flip over onto page 4, you will also see, again, just a little bit more detail here for your 10-year expenditures. As I noted earlier, you did in FY 2023 see some expenditures there for the orphaned wells. Again, you do see this here in the expenditures as well. I would also note that in FY 2025, you will see some increase in contractual expenditures there. That is going to be related to the implementation of the agency's docket system. And again, still some orphan well expenditures there. When you flip over onto page number 5, you will see a more detailed table of state operations of expenditures by category. I do want to just note for the committee a couple of items here. As a part of the overall agency expenditures, only about 15.4% is for salaries and wages. But again, I would remind the committee that is in FY 2026, and that is where you are seeing, for example, if you look down a little bit further into repair and servicing under contractual services, that makes up 16.1%. That approved number versus the actual number and the agency's request is much higher. You're talking about a $5.5 million expenditures in FY 2025 as compared to $21.3 million estimated in 2026. I would note that those I would note that repairing and servicing is mostly related, again, to the orphaned well program. Not only did the agency receive monies from, or is estimating to receive monies from the bipartisan infrastructure law and the IRA, they have received additional monies for the orphaned well program that was also an act of Congress. That was a little bit before, a couple fiscal years before the IRA and the bill. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but I do think I have some more details in the summary. I would note that the professional services expenditures at 3.1% is mostly relating to dockets and the docket system. And then I would also note then for the committee this other item down here at 14.8. You will see that change rather drastically in 25 as it compares to 26 and 27. That is related to contractor expenditures to help with the grant program. Many of those federal dollars that are coming into the state not only are going to go to Kansans and organizations, but also to some of those monies can be used for contracting for assistance in running the grant program. The KCC indicates that current staffing would not allow them for these large grant programs to staff that, and so they're opting to contract to help get those grants out the door. Madam Chair and members of the committee, a little bit more detail here on state aid and other assistance on page 6. I would note that you will see that the rebates have been recategorized to federal. So you see these federal payments up here for state aid, and then I would also note other assistance as well. That's different expenditures as it relates to the rebates and again some ARPA monies that I discussed a little bit earlier in the presentation. On to page number 7 is an expenditures by program and FTEs by program. Some additional detail there for the committee. And then flipping over onto page 8, I do want to draw the committee's attention to the Public Service Regulation Fee Fund analysis. Again, not dissimilar, in fact, completely similar to the Citizens Utility Ratepayer Board. They can assess quarterly levies on public utilities and recover recovery of expenditures as well. I would note for the committee that you can see here that revenue estimates for FY 2026 and FY 2027 are many times larger than what they were actually in FY 2025. You will also notice this fund had an ending balance of roughly $4.9 million in '24. The fund technically ended as a negative ending balance in 2025 and is estimated to have zero ending balance moving forward in FY 2026 and FY 2027. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I do want to note that legally speaking, the Public Service Regulation Fund would not be allowed to be zero. So while it shows as being zero, the reason that that would have happened is because, and I've seen it before, that agencies would over encumber, or that is to say that agencies will open what we call encumbrance for, let's just say, a water bill. I estimate that I need to pay my water bill, it's going to be $100. When I get my bill from the city, it comes out at $75. Well, I thought it was going to be $100, but I only needed to pay $75. What that encumbrance would do is it would essentially count that $100 estimate as an actual expenditure. So agencies typically do and may estimate a little bit higher to be safe on expenditures. When the bills actually come due, they pay them. After they pay them, they can release it. So I did talk with the agency that some of these encumbrances have been identified and touched up and released, but legally speaking, they cannot actually end negative. This is a result of encumbrances that were higher than revenues at that point in time. Madam Chair and members of the committee, if you flip over onto page number 9, that is the beginning of the FY 2026 analysis. Item number 1 is that approved number for FY 2026 by the 2025 legislature. That is about $132 million from all funds and 204.5 FTE. Item number 2 here is other changes. I do think for this particular agency, it is most beneficial to explain these changes via changes to their expenditures by program. I apologize, Madam Chair. The administration program is estimating to see an increase of expenditures of almost $2 million, all from agency fee funds, and that's an increase of 1.6 FTE positions. And that includes estimated increases across all expenditure categories, with the largest increases being in contractual services, followed by salaries and wages. As we discussed during the CURB budget summary as well, there was a legislative division of post-audit finding that necessitated updates to IT infrastructure. As a result of that, the agency is moving IT expenditures from other program areas underneath administration. That is to say, they are consolidating IT services under administration. So you will see some increase in expenditures there, and then you do see, again, across the other programs, you do see some reduced expenditures, specifically from the Public Service Regulation Fund. Again, that has to do with IT. The agency has also indicated that in recent fiscal years, it has been relatively difficult to hire. However, as a result of some higher salaries and wages, as a result of the legislative pay plans and some retention bonuses that are being offered by the agency, they are estimating quicker hiring times when positions become vacant. So that is to say, when individuals do retire or leave, they estimate they will be able to hire them and retain them better than they previously have. Item number 3 is the utilities program. That's an increase of about $500,000, all from agency fee and federal funds. There's also the addition of a half an FTE position. The agency's request does include estimated increases in expenditures for other assistance. That's partially offset by some reduced expenditures for salaries and wages and others. As I discussed earlier, there is a $2 million increase here, and I do apologize. I have a typo here that says in the American Rescue Plan Act, Rescue Plan. That's $2 million there. I would note that was from a couple fiscal years ago. The 2024 legislature had approved $4 million ARPA to allow small municipalities served by natural gas to essentially help with distribution lines and connection of natural gas service providers. The agency indicated that, I apologize, I'll go back a little bit further. The 2024 legislature also directed that the agency establish an application program for that very program for natural gas distribution lines. However, the agency has indicated that in order to get that sort of that program stood up, it took a little bit of time to come up with those guidelines. There were also some requirements that cities had to complete: cost service studies, adopt rates, et cetera. The agency does indicate that those requirements have since been met, and now they are estimating for that money to go out the door. So while it looks like an addition, it just simply wasn't spent in the previous fiscal years. So the authorization was there, but since it wasn't approved in this particular fiscal year, not necessarily a reappropriation, it shows as an add. Item number 4 is those energy programs. This is where we get into some of those home and energy rebates. There is a decrease there of $2.6 million. That's from agency fee and federal funds. The agency is indicating that the reduction is due to federal receipts relating to those home and energy rebates. Those reductions are partially offset by grid resilience. So that is to say that while federal receipts for energy rebates is estimated to be lower than initially thought, grid resilience is estimated to be higher than initially thought. Federal funding for the home energy rebates for low-income and single-family and multiple-family homes became available as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act. Those rebates can be offered for efficiency upgrades to home appliances and equipment. Federal funding for that grid resilience became available to states through the bipartisan infrastructure law. The objective of that particular grant is to improve electricity delivery and reliability, and the agency is estimating an increase there for grid resilience grants. Flipping over onto page number 11, all other adjustments. Madam Chair and members of the committee, those are what, again, I call as the rats and cats. That includes an increase of $117,000 from agency fee funds and federal funds. And that is mostly attributable to salaries and wages. Increase is mostly attributable to salaries and wages. As discussed above, that the agency has indicated that hiring has been difficult in the recent fiscal years. However, through the result of new recruiting strategies along with retention bonuses, the agency does estimate for salaries and wages to be higher, simply because that when folks retire, they can hire them more quickly and hold on to them. Those increases are partially offset by some decreased expenditures for salaries and wages and transportation. So that is to say that while the agency does estimate to be able to have quicker hiring rates and holding on to employees in some programs, they are estimating some lower expenditures in other programs as well for salaries and wages. Of note, the agency does estimate that increasing expenditures from the Energy Community Revitalization Grant Fund in FY 2026. As you all may remember at this point, I feel like I've been drowning on for a minute, but the orphaned well program that I did discuss, that is where that particular fund is found, and that's the Energy Community Revitalization Grant Fund. And decreasing expenditures from agency fee funds for the plugging of abandoned oil wells. That is an increase of about $860,000. So you're talking about $18.9 million in total expenditures for plugging orphaned wells in fiscal year 2026. The agency is estimating total federal funding over several fiscal years for this particular revenue stream to be roughly $33.6 million for the plugging of abandoned wells. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would note for the committee that in FY 2026, this agency's budget has been adjusted as a result of the actions taken by the Special Committee on State Budget, and that would include to not add the 0.2 FTE aggregated FTE positions, so delete 0.2 FTE, and then also to delete amount of roughly $32,000 for retention bonuses for KCC staff. I would note that. And Madam Chair, I can certainly stand for questions in FY 2026, or I can move forward in FY 2027.
Thank you, Luke. Committee, questions on 26? What page was that, what you just said, the .2 eliminated, and then the retention bonus dollars were eliminated? I see the .2 on page 9.
Madam Chair, to answer that question, that would actually, that's a good question. That would not be here on this budget summary page. This budget summary page only discusses the agency's request. Instead, that item can be found on the shorthand sheet that is included in your binders. And you'll need to look under KCC, but you can see what those changes are.
Gotcha, thank you. Go ahead. Oh, Representative Bloom.
Madam Chair, Luke, on page 4, on the top, what is other assistance?
Madam Chair, Representative, other assistance and state aid are somewhat similar, but also not. So that is to say that aid to locals, which would be state aid, that would be payments that would go to some form of taxing entity. So you're talking to municipalities, counties, things of that nature. That's where you will see expenditures going there. Other assistance is where you will see typically payments to persons, so to individuals. So other assistance for this particular agency is going to most capture those energy rebates and those grid resilience rebates that are coming in from federal dollars. So that is the way that the agency has estimated to account for those expenditures, is payments to individuals who are applying for these rebates as a result of completing some of the steps for those home energy efficiency steps in that grant process.
And so that's going to jump from 2025 actual of $1 million up to 54 million? So any more on 26? If not, let's go to 27. Oh, Representative.
And it might, thank you, Madam Chair, and it might spill over to 27, but I'm just trying to understand how KCC and CURB are addressing these new technology needs that they have as a result of the audit. Because there was a little more information with CURB and what they were trying to do here. So I understand they're like separating their systems totally, correct? Pretty much. And so there's not a lot of information here in KCC on what their portion of the spend is. I think it's lumped in and included. So I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about that.
Madam Chair, Representative, I would defer to Chair French to discuss some of those more nuanced expenditures that they are estimating, just as Joe was able to better describe exactly what they're needing to purchase. I do believe that the agency will be able to describe that better than I may.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. FY 2027 is on page number 12. Not dissimilar to FY 2026, many of these items are the same. So that is to say that the changes that were estimated in 26 are estimated to also occur in 2027. Item number 1 is that administration program. Again, that's an increase of about $4.9 million, and that is going to be mostly related to them moving all IT expenditures into the administration program from the other agency programs. You will also notice in there are some additional expenditures for salaries and wages, again, as it relates to new hiring practices and retention bonuses. Item number 2 is a utilities program. That's an increase of about $280,000 across all funds. When you flip over onto page 13, there's a little bit more discussion here increase, there is an increase in there of about $2 million from ARPA for those municipal natural gas utilities. Again, the 2024 legislature had approved a total of $4 million. the agency is estimating expending $2 million in 2026, expending the rest of those ARPA dollars in FY 2027. And I would note, Madam Chair and members of the committee, that most ARPA dollars do have a hard cutoff spend of like the end of September of this calendar year. So even though we will be in calendar year 2026, that will actually be like the first quarter of FY 2027. So just as a note for the committee, that those dollars should be gone and out the door by September of this year. The agency did spend a little bit of money for that in 2025, but again, because they were not able to, because the cities needed to have some cost of service studies and rate adoptions, whatnot, they weren't able to get them out, but they do estimate those to get those out during this fiscal year and in FY 2027. Item number 3 is the transportation program. That's all from the motor carrier license fee fund. That's a decrease of $750,000. And that is, again, related to those IT expenditures, reducing them in the transportation program and moving them over into the agency's administration program. Item number 4, the conservation program. There's a decrease of $2.6 million, all from agency fee and federal funds. That decrease is, the largest decrease is for the plugging of abandoned wells at the bottom of page 13. The agency is estimating receiving and expending more of those funds in FY 2026, which would then make less available for 2027. The agency's estimated expenditures for 27 for that purpose are $2.1 million less than the FY 2026 approved amount. Flipping over onto the final page, page 14, is those energy programs. That's a decrease of $3.1 million, all from agency fee and federal funds, and a reduction of 0.9 FTE positions. The federal funding for those home energy rebates for low-income and single-family and multifamily homes became available through the IRA. However, the agency is estimating lower than what was initially thought for those. The funding that became available through the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, is higher than what was initially thought. So, Madam Chair, I would note that still, while you're seeing a reduction in federal funding for the rebates, for example, it is still, that's based on what the original estimate was. So as you can tell by looking at the 10-year table on page 3 that goes back to FY 2023, even though these are decreases in estimates for federal funding, they are still not insignificant as it relates to overall expenditures from the KCC's budget over the last 10 fiscal years. So, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to stand for questions, or again, as I noted, Chair French is with us on WebEx, and he can certainly address the committee and be able to answer any questions you all may have.
Thank you, Luke. Questions on the committee for Luke, for the numbers guy? If not, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And now is Mr. French online?
I am online, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome to committee.
Wonderful. I have a presentation, a slide deck. I'll leave it up to the chair whether you'd like it presented. I believe you all have copies of it on hand, and I've got a copy in front of me, so it doesn't necessarily have to be displayed. Well, first, I want to just thank you for the opportunity to appear remotely. I do apologize for not being there in person. I think every year I've made it in person, but this year I'm unable. But before I begin my slide deck, I'll just say this does give me an opportunity to highlight one of the regulatory areas of the KCC. The reason I can't be with you today is myself and one of my directors, Justin Grady, we're online. We are out throughout the state conducting public hearings about a proposed transmission line in the state. I'm coming to you from a hotel in Arc City right now. Last night we held a public hearing in Sedan in Chautauqua County, and tonight we'll be holding a public hearing in Winfield in Cowley County. One of the areas of regulation that we have is anytime large electric transmission lines are proposed to be built throughout the state, that requires a siting permit from the KCC, where we look at the necessity for that line and we look at the route that's proposed for the line. and whether that route is reasonable. And as part of that analysis, the statute requires us to hold at least one public hearing in a county where the line is to be located. This particular line that we're looking at right now is quite a long line. It's going through Sedgwick, Sumner, Cowley, and Chautauqua counties, 133 miles. So we did decide to hold two public hearings, and as I said, we were in Sedan last night and expect to be in Winfield tonight. So appreciate the opportunity to be remote. It was the only way we were going to make it happen. But again, I'm glad it let me highlight some work that we're doing. So let's get to the presentation. I know that I'm your last agenda item, and I want to move through this and get to questions. This slide deck really just highlights the work that the KCC does in our jurisdictional areas. So if you'll turn to slide 2, this is just the mission statement of the Kansas Corporation Commission, and it's to serve the people of Kansas by regulating the state's energy infrastructure, oil and gas production, and commercial trucking to ensure public safety. And you'll see that's pretty broad, and it's a reflection that we are an agency that catches a lot of different subject matter. A lot of different difficult regulatory issues have to go through our agency. So if you'll turn to page 3, this just tells you a little bit of background about our agency and the commissioners themselves. The commission does consist of 3 members, all appointed by the governor to overlapping 4-year terms. No more than 2 members may be of the same political party. Right now, you've got 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, and 1 unaffiliated, yours truly. And then as the third bullet point we'll note here, as Luke said, we are entirely fee funded, primarily through assessments to our regulated industries and fees to our regulated industries. And it says primarily fee funded, but I just do want to emphasize that is no state general funds, and we are actually a net contributor to the state general fund, and we'll get into that later. We do have 5 main divisions that we'll describe in the following slides: our administrative division, conservation division, utilities division, transportation, and energy. And then that final bullet point tells you if you want to go dig through the statutes, you can find where we derive all of our statutory authority. We are an agency that is a creature of statute, and so these statutes are our Bible, and they tell us exactly what we do to regulate the industries we regulate. So please turn to page 4. This the next couple pages are just going to give you a brief overview of each of our divisions. First, our administrative division. This is essentially the support of the entire agency. It's the behind the scenes that makes the agency function, mostly overseen by our executive director. This would include functions such as legal, our public affairs division, human resources, IT, docket management, and our fiscal division. Next is our conservation division, probably better known as our oil and gas division. And their mission is really, it's to regulate the oil and gas production throughout the state. And it's a couple of main functions there. It is to prevent waste, to make sure that we are efficiently using and fully using that resource of the state. But it also serves an environmental protection component, regulating how folks perform those production activities, making sure that any spills are properly cleaned up, that wells have proper integrity and are not posing a threat to fresh and usable water. And that division also, as you heard through some of the budget analysis, plays a big part in plugging abandoned wells, and that's a big part of their role. Next, you'll see the utilities division. This division often gets a lot of the headlines, not necessarily for popular things, but they regulate everything about utility service from investor-owned utilities throughout the state. As was described in Curb's presentation, it's not every utility throughout the state. There are certain ones that are exempted, but for large investor-owned utilities, we regulate all of their rates and everything about the service provisions between them and their customers. And if a utility wants to change any of those items, they must seek approval through the Kansas Corporation Commission. Next, you'll see on the following slide, slide 5, it talks about our transportation division and our regulation of commercial motor carriers throughout the state. to promote safety on the highways. Much of what is done here is through delegation of federal regulatory requirements, and we work closely with the Kansas Highway Patrol to enforce much of this. And then finally, we have our energy division. There was some discussion of some rebate programs. That is a coming piece of what the energy division does. But as you read here, there are a number of programs that the energy division administers to promote education, but also to provide support and assistance for energy efficiency to individuals and municipalities and other entities throughout the state. Slide 6 as just a broad overview of our regulatory authority. I'm not going to dwell on that. It cites to the Kansas statutes and gives you a quick overview of what we regulate. The second paragraph is probably what I would mostly point you to. That's the important piece that tells you what we do not regulate. If you live in the area of an electric cooperative, we are not authorized to regulate the rates and services of electric cooperatives. We don't regulate water cooperatives. We do not regulate municipal utilities. That's a question we get a lot. They are self-regulated by their city councils. We don't regulate wireless telephone, long distance service, cable companies, or the internet. And we'll move to our final slide, slide 7 here. And this is just a snapshot of our activity throughout the year that we present this to the committee every year. I guess this is calendar year 2025. We held 93 commission business meetings. These are meetings where we approve orders, which are our official actions and decisions in the cases that come before us. We held 9 evidentiary hearings, and that's sort of like the trial type proceeding. If a case gets that far, we hold a trial, and that's an evidentiary hearing. We held 9 of those last year, and then we held 5 public hearings. And of course, you've heard me say that we're already got a couple in the books this year, and have a few more on our schedule. So 5 last year, and more to come this year. If you look down a little further, you can see in fiscal year 2025, we issued 2,320 total orders. And then you'll see a description of all the fines assessed on different regulated entities by category. And you can see that adds up to $633,100. And there's a good asterisk at the bottom that tells you we do not keep any of those funds. Any fines we assess to promote our jurisdictional authority and make sure that regulations are followed, those don't go to us, those go to the state general fund. So we are, as I mentioned before, actually a net contributor to the state general fund. So finally, on the final slide, we do have contact information for our executive director, Celeste Cheney Tucker, and our legislative liaison, Lynn Retz, is also in the room, and I believe you all have her information as well. So I will conclude now and stand for questions, but I do want to mention we have, as I mentioned, Celeste Cheney Tucker, our executive director, is in the room, and she is going to be a great source for budget questions or anything related to administrative items of the agency. We have, as I mentioned, Lynn Retz, our legislative coordinator, is in the room. We have Mike Hamey, who is the director of our transportation division, in the room. So if you've got commercial motor carrier questions, those go to him. Ryan Hoffman is the director of our conservation oil and gas division, also in the room. And then online, you have me. And Justin Grady, our director of utilities, is also online. As I mentioned, he's joining me for these public hearings down in the southern part of the state. So with that, I do thank you for your time, and we will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. French. Questions from the committee? You must have done an excellent job, sir. Are there any other questions or comments about the Kansas Corporation Commission budget? If not, we will welcome Representative Hoffman.
I need to say something, don't I? Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't know if you wanted to maybe see if the agency wanted to discuss the .2 and the bonus retention. maybe give you a little bit more idea whether or not you want to maybe put that back in or not.
All right, thank you. So would the appropriate agency person like to discuss the adding of the .2 and the retention bonus dollars?
Yeah, I will turn that to our executive director, but I believe our position was that we were willing to accept that adjustment. Yeah, I think we would probably say that the retention bonuses, which were authorized by the legislature, would be very helpful to us in our mission. But I don't believe we raised any particular objection to that. But Ms. Cheney Tucker, would you have anything to add to that?
I'm sorry. My name is Celeste Cheney Tucker, as Chair French stated, and I am the executive director. No, we did not put up a fuss about it. However, it would be nice to have the staffing and retention bonuses, especially with the recruitment challenges that we have.
Thank you, Celeste. Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as far as the retention bonuses, what were those intended to go towards? Or to who, I guess?
Those will be intended to go towards, so say if we have like succession planning in place. So we're aware that someone is going to retire, that will also help us retain until we have their replacement in place for their position. It'll also help us to support those staffing members that we have that currently do an amazing job, and we'll be able to reward them for those, for their efforts.
Okay. So if we end up doing later a increase in salaries all around, that will go to you guys too, right? You'll be part of that.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So how did you arrive at the $32,000 figure? Is it broken down by how many years of service someone has, or just elaborate on that a little, please?
We basically, right now, we have the bonus and like the spot awards that's already in for the state. There was like really I think we kind of did it like by FTEs. I can get that exact calculation to you, but right off the top of my head, I don't have that.
Okay. Anything else for the Kansas Corporation Commission? Vice Chair Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a question about the federal funding for home energy rebates for low-income, single-family, and multifamily. It's on page 10, I'm sorry. Talks about rebates may be offered for efficiency upgrades on items such as home appliances, equipment. How do these folks make the case for that equipment? Do they make an application to whom for those rebates? What's the process?
Currently, I do believe that's a contractual, oh, sorry about that. Is that better? Okay. Currently, I believe that is where our contractual services come in, and that's what we're hiring out for that program to be administered. KCC just is like a pass-through for that.
So you don't know how the regular citizen makes application for that?
Lynn Retz will be able to answer
Okay.
that because she knows more about the energy program than I do as far as how those are administered. So I'll turn that over to her.
Okay, is that the one that's gone up 50 million?
Lynn Retz, Legislative Liaison for the KCC. Yes, that's what has gone up. That is completely federal funds. Those requirements are established through the federal DOE requirements. They will have to go through an application process for determination if it qualifies under those DOE requirements.
And where do they go to make that application? Do you know
We'll have
yet?
an online portal.
Okay.
For that to happen. And then there will be a review process that is already in place through that online portal.
And I assume there'll be an educational process across the state to let everybody know this money's there.
Yes. Once we have it all the way through the approval process with DOE, There's obviously been some delays with that program due to the federal shutdown. DOE has now gone through an internal reorganization process, so now who's administering that program has shifted. We have gone through we may be on our 4th program officer within DOE just in the last 6 months.
Thank you very much. That clears that up. Thank you.
Anyone else have questions for the KCC? Seeing none, thank you. Everyone that represented the KCC that's here, will close the hearing on the KCC. I do have a couple of announcements. Committee members, please turn in your payment vouchers to Luke. Also, for all of the committees that presented today, the performance-based budgeting forms that we have every year for the agencies to fill out. They're not, the KLRD publication is not quite ready yet. They may be ready by next week, but check in for them, and if they're not, please write up a performance-based budget. I'm sure you all have files from years before. Answer those same questions so that I can take that to appropriations. So is there anything else to come before the committee today?
Madam Chair, do we leave these here for future? Can we take these back to our office, Luke?
Madam Chair, Representative, absolutely. Yeah, you can take that back home. I just wanted to put something together for you all. There's a hard copy in order for you all to follow, considering what we had lined up, but absolutely take them home.
And so, yes, everybody's going to have an electronic copy of your budgets at least 24 hours before we hear them so people can review them. And then when we get to committee, there will be hard copies. And that file looks like a perfect little thing to store them in for this session.
Except that it takes this much by the end of the year.
No, not for ag and natural resources budget, heavens no. Luke.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and I'm going to speak with the committee assistant. We do have an assigned committee assistant. I've yet to meet her. Looking forward to that, and then I'm going to have a conversation regarding the hard copies as well. I'm going to try to, when I send you all the email out 24 hours in advance of those summaries, I'm also going to go ahead and print them, and I do believe take them to the CA in Madam Chair's office so that you all can swing by and pick those up beforehand. I'm going to have a conversation with Della to see how we want to handle that out. But you will have hard copies available as well.
Any other comments? Thank you, staff, for what you do. Thank you to those in the gallery. Thank you to committee members for coming in today. Drive careful going home. I don't know if it's snowing or what it's doing out there, but anyway, we are adjourned.